Okay, print on dark eyes. So good afternoon. Welcome to the Murtha Tidville County Borough Full Council meeting on Wednesday, the 2nd of March 2022. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and may be broadcast by the authority's internet site. The images and sound recordings may also be used for training purposes within the authority. So item 1 is apologies for absence.
Mr Mayor, we have apologies from Councillor Tanya Skinner, and that is the only apology then, because we did have an apology from Councillor Lee Davis, but he has managed to attend. I can see, is Councillor Ian Thomas going to tell us somebody else has an apology?
Sorry, I'm a bit ahead of myself, Karen.
That was very keen, Councillor Thomas. I think that's all on that item then, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. And thank you to Councillor Lee Davis, who's joining us internationally today, I understand, on his holiday. So thank you for that, Lee. Next item on the agenda is declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? Councillor Ian Thomas.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Agenda item 6, council tax resolution. I'm a member of Bedlin Community Council, but I have dispensation to speak and vote. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Councillor Geraint Thomas.
Yeah, agenda item number 7, Mr Mayor, declare a presidential address on that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor David Jones.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Item number 7, I own a property that's affected by this matter.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Clive Tovey.
Yes, similarly, I own a property affected by non-domestic rates.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Shrell Jago.
Thank you. Exactly the same as Councillor Ian Thomas, member of Bedlin Community Council, but full dispensation to speak and vote.
Okay, thank you. Normally I declare an interest in item number 7, but I've spoken to the monitoring officer, and because my non-domestic property will be closing down before the start of the financial year, I'm advised that I don't need to declare an interest. Councillor Jones, your hand is still up. Is that a legacy from the previous? Thank you, Councillor David Jones. So we move on to agenda item number 3, minutes of previous meetings. That's items 3A to 3H. Lisa Midden, please.
Yes, I move those minutes, Mr Mayor.
Okay, thank you. And seconder, please.
And I second them, Mr Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Hand you over to Caris.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Can I ask all those favours who all of those members who wish to abstain on this item, could you please show now? All of those members who wish to vote against on this item, please show now. Thank you. And all of those members voting in favour, please show now. Yes, Mr Mayor, that's carried.
Okay, thank you very much. If you could lower our hands then, please, members. Thank you very much. Agenda item number 4, notice of motion. Who's taking this for us, please?
Councillor Barry is taking the motion. I don't know if he's muted at the moment.
Okay, Councillor Barry.
I know that Councillor Barry had joined. I saw him join.
Yes, he's showing on the list.
Ah.
Oh, there we go, Councillor Barry.
Okay. For some reason, hang on. Let me get rid of that. Technical issues there. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Okay, so the notice of motion. Can you hear me now, yeah?
Sorry, can I interrupt you just for a second, Councillor Barry? We can, but Councillor Gibbs had just put his hand up, and I don't know if that was to draw attention to something. Councillor Gibbs, is there a problem?
Yeah, thank you, Caris. Just want to say not everybody is on mute, so I am getting a little bit of feedback on you.
Yeah, Yeah, that's absolutely right. There was a little bit of feedback. So if everybody could just check that, and that might help Councillor Barry as well now. Sorry, Councillor Barry.
Right, okay. So the notice of motion. Okay, so the notice of motion speaks to the review of council tax and the subsequent change required to the revenue support grant mechanism that benefits areas such as Murtha and Blaenau Gwent, with our high levels of deprivation and the highest council tax rates in Wales. The notice of motion actually states the Community Independent Group requests Murtha Tidville County Borough Council petition Welsh Government to apply a fixed percentage tax rate to updated property values, but retaining existing discounts, premiums and exemptions as proportional reductions or additions to this fixed tax rate. This will be a revaluation with a continuous and proportional system to remove the banded structure and apply a fixed proportional tax rate to the exact estimated value of each property. We require a commitment from Welsh Government to begin implementation of a revaluation with a continuous and proportional system by April 2023, 20 years after the last revaluation. A move towards a proportional council tax system would involve revaluation that will bring an estimated reduction to the average net council tax bill in Merthyr Tydfil Band D of between £180 and £200 per annum under the proportional options. As the Institute of Fiscal Studies has identified, council tax reform in isolation will be difficult. It will need the associated equitable reforms and guarantees of the mechanisms that produce the revenue support grant, reviewed along the same timelines. If Welsh Government are to maintain this type of equalisation following revaluation and reform, it will need to adjust the revenue support grant it provides to local authorities to reflect the resulting changes in tax bases, increasing the revenue support grant for those whose tax bases fall, such as Murtha, and reducing it for those whose tax bases rise. This will need to be communicated by way of representation to Welsh Government, particularly Welsh Government Minister Rebecca Evans, MS, and by the Leader of the Council, the Chief Executive, and by a 151 officer at the Directors of Finance meetings to relate the magnitude and urgency of the change required, and the response will be fed back to all members of this Council, the result of which will benefit the residents of Merthyr Tydfil for years to come. Specifically, if we can make the recommendation, Monitor Officer, the 151 officer, supported by the CEO and the Leader of the Council, will send a joint communication to Rebecca Evans, MS, Senedd Finance Minister, to inform Welsh Government of our preference for council tax and revenue support grant reform. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barry. I understand Councillor Kevin O'Neill is seconding this.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to second and also request a recorded vote. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. But before we go to the vote, are there any questions? No, no one's indicating any questions on this. Are there any comments on this, please? Councillor Mitten.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to support the motion, just to remind the community independents that the Minister, Rebecca Evans, announced a council tax reform by Welsh Government supported by Plaid Cymru, a joint agreement back on the 12th of August 2021. And in doing so, I raised representation on behalf of Merthyr Tydfil County Borough Council on Friday, the 24th of September 2021, recognising the reform and also asking that this is done as soon as possible on behalf of the residents of Merthyr Tydfil and Wales collectively, and I was supported by a number of leaders. So yes, I have no problem in supporting this and this notice of motion. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Chris Davis, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Like the leader, I'm absolutely delighted to support this notice of motion put forward by former members of the council's leading group and administration. Obviously now the Community Independent Group. Absolutely what Councillor Barry has said in presenting the motion, and obviously what's included in the document, is absolutely right. You know, Murtha Tidville has high areas of multiple deprivation, and it's absolutely right and fitting and proper that the Welsh Government use all of the evidence available to it. You know, the Institute of Physical Studies has completed extensive research. The government's own index of multiple deprivation, which it produces on a periodic basis, will, you know, show the impacts of, you know, austerity, Brexit, obviously COVID will continue to hit and blight communities like Murtha Tidville. So this is an absolutely excellent motion that you know, the government, Welsh Government, moves forward at pace now. You know, the review in respect of the reform of council tax, and absolutely is fitting and right that local authorities and councils like Murtha Tidville have money into its pot, into the settlement that's provided, that absolutely is right, fit and proper to provide the council with the much needed financial resources to deliver and provide the best services to the public of Murtha Tidville. So as the portfolio member for governance and resources, I'm absolutely you know, delighted to put my support and 100% commitment and backing to this excellent notice of motion.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Councillor Kevin O'Neill wanted to comment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm delighted that the strategic importance of this particular motion is recognised by other independent members here. There is no logic to those who have the least to pay the most. I'm slightly disappointed that it's been considered as far back as 2021, and it's now because of our motion coming in, it's been discussed. Let's hope this had some impetus. Let's hope this had some speed, and let's hope we'll have some differences for the communities in Murtha Tidville in a quicker element than previously. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Councillor O'Neill. If there are no more comments, we need 5 people to request a recorded vote. So if anybody would like to request a recorded vote, if you could show your hands now, please. Yes, we have five members, so I'll hand it back to you, Caris, to conduct the vote.
Thank you. Before I do that, can I just check with Maya to make sure she's got an accurate recording of what Councillor Barry told us was the recommendation?
Yes, Chair.
That's fine. Thank you. So, members, I will call out your name one by one, and I need you to tell me whether you are for or against the motion, or whether you are abstaining. So, firstly, Councillor Julian Amos.
For.
Councillor Andrew Barry.
For.
Councillor Chris Barry.
For.
Councillor Brent Carter.
For.
Councillor David Chaplin. Councillor David Chaplin.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Malcolm Colbran.
For.
Councillor Chris Davis.
For.
Councillor Jeremy Davis.
For.
Councillor Lee Davis.
For.
Councillor Ernie Goldsworthy.
For.
Councillor Kevin Gibbs.
For.
Councillor David Hughes.
For.
Councillor David Isaac.
For.
Let's move down my list. Councillor Sherelle Jago.
For.
Councillor Clive Jones.
For.
Councillor David Jones.
For.
Councillor Harvey Jones.
For.
Councillor Michelle Jones. For. Councillor Gareth Lewis.
For.
Councillor Lisa Mitten.
For.
Councillor Kevin O'Neill.
For.
Councillor Gareth Richards.
For.
Councillor Darren Roberts.
For.
Councillor Tony Rogers.
For.
Councillor Declan Salmon.
4.
Councillor Bill Smith.
4.
Councillor Geraint Thomas.
4.
Councillor Ian Thomas.
4.
Councillor John Thomas.
4.
Councillor Scott Thomas.
4.
And Councillor Clive Tivy.
4.
That's carried unanimously, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Before we go to item number 5, I think Caris would just like to say a few words.
Yes, just briefly, I know that normally when we are discussing matters, there is an option for members to move an amendment to a recommendation. When we come to financial matters, from which consequences will flow should there be an amendment proposed to an amount that is being recommended, I am going to have to advise you that you cannot move an amendment to that recommendation if it alters the figures in the report, because you would then be voting without knowing what the consequences are for the figures in the report, and that therefore would lay you open to legal challenge because you would not have been able to consider fully the implication of the change in the number. Therefore, what you will be able to do with this report tonight is simply to vote for or against it or to abstain. And the same will apply to the next report because the figures in that are dependent on the figures in this one. If you are not able to set a council tax rate tonight, then we will need to carry this meeting over into tomorrow, by which time the financial department under Steve Jones will be able to produce alternative figures based upon what we will need to discuss are any proposed amendments to any of the figures in this report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that for us. So then we'll move on to agenda item number 5, budget requirement and council tax 2022-23 and state of the council debate. And I'll hand you over to Councillor Lisa Midden, please.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, the Local Government Finance Act 1992 determines that this authority delivers its budget requirement and council tax setting to Welsh Government by the 11th of March 2022. The provisional local government settlement for 22-23 indicates a provisional settlement of plus 9% for Murtha Tidville, and the settlement enables the council to accommodate unavoidable financial pressures in excess of £6 million, with a further £1.9 million related to the homelessness temporary accommodation costs to be financed through the Welsh Government's hardship fund. Furthermore, the indication of £1.5 million service efficiencies enables the council tax increase proposal to this council to be reduced from the budgeted 3.55% to 1%. I will now summarise some of the key achievements from the local authority and our officers. A full copy of this information will be available via the council's website for all our councillors. Despite the financial constraints and continued demands made on the authority, we will continue to provide vital services and have protected those in greatest need. All our departments do the very best they can under very difficult circumstances, and in many cases, they are the envy of our colleagues across Wales. So some examples of our work include: under finance, the revenues and benefits have continued to work tirelessly over the last 12 months in ensuring the timely payment of business grants to grateful local businesses unable to trade during the pandemic. Since the beginning of the pandemic, 5,628 awards of business grants and business rates relief have been administered, totalling nearly £38 million. In addition, self-isolation, social care and winter fuel support payments have also been administered in a timely, effective manner. Accountancy and insurance have ensured that this council has claimed £9 million of financial support from Welsh Government's COVID hardship fund relating to additional costs and loss of income. In education, which of course is also my cabinet portfolio, I'm pleased to say that, even though the last year has been very challenging for our schools, our children and our young people. Despite that, Cabinet members have engaged with young people through online Teams meetings, and this has been a fantastic opportunity for members to hear the views of our young people and indeed be challenged quite rigorously on the work that we do. The Spotlight on Education Week in October was an excellent showcase of the work the schools and other settings undertake to support and develop the future generations of Merthyr Tidville. And from the animation of the Raising Aspirations, Raising Standards strategy to the Illumini videos to the work shared by schools, which they undertook, despite, of course, the challenges of lockdown, and then hosting a question time event as well by a youth cabinet, we really were able to celebrate education across the county borough. Opportunities for the development of the Welsh language across our schools have been in the news this year, as well with Penydre becoming the first secondary school across the Central South region to achieve Gold Campus Cymraeg Award for their work in promoting the Welsh language, actually being an English language school. The Afon Taf cluster schools took part in the transition event last summer in conjunction with the Urdd, and compared by children from Rhyd y Grig, the Urdd also supported youth service activities during the summer fun of activities. Education remains a key priority for this council and this administration, and there are clear areas of strength within the work we do. And I will be sharing some more news on our education services in the very near future. With social services, budgets within social care, of course, can be unpredictable in the sense that our children looked after rate and adults requiring support for their care needs can be challenging and obviously change in such a short time. Social services departments have continued to face financial pressures, but they have significantly been supported with grants over the past 2 years, and this remains a positive position at the end of the financial year, because we have been successful in securing a large capital investment as well from ICF to transform our older people's day services for people with dementia in the borough. It is the first now fully integrated health and social care day service in Wales to receive the Butterfly accreditation for dementia care. And within recent weeks, we also received level 1 accreditation, which is also a first in the UK, which is fantastic for all of our staff, the service users and everybody in that daycare service. We have been successful in obtaining capital funding for the Neighbourhood Learning Centre of nearly £1,126,000 from the Cwm Morgannwg ICF discretionary capital programme, which has identified work with young people and our children looked after as a key priority. We have also received capital funding to carry out feasibility assessments for a children's residential establishment, so greatly needed. Within neighbourhood services, under waste, despite pressures, significant improvements have been made in waste management in relation to achieving the Welsh Government recovery and landfill diversion targets. With the continuation of initiatives such as Keep Up with the Joneses and the opening of a reuse shop, Waste Management are continuing to explore every opportunity to achieve the target for reuse, recycling and composting. New initiatives include provision of a recycle on the go bins to replace existing litter bins, which you may have seen already in place across the county borough. Engineering and highways, the Highways Department successfully secured an additional £1.8 million from Welsh Government Resilient Road funding to continue to upgrade the county borough's outdated highways drainage systems. A number of drainage schemes have been completed, with work still ongoing. I'm pleased to say that the gully machine has now been brought back in-house, which enables a more responsive service for cleansing all adopted gullies and dealing with any potential flood issues. The Highways Department also received £65,000 worth of digital improvement grant, which enabled 3 new weather stations to be installed at Bedlinog, Heelgerig and Mountain Hare to provide more accurate forecasts for our winter maintenance service. And a Welsh Government grant of £640k has been received to undertake maintenance on 17 disused local coal tips to remove the risk of tip failures or landslips. In addition, all 131 disused coal tips and quarries have been inspected throughout Merthyr Tidville. There have also been a number of road safety training programmes for all of our schools and a record number of children taking part this year. Under street scene, I'm pleased to say that the Parks Department have continued to deliver quality green space initiatives despite the pandemic. This has included retaining green flag status for Kavatha Park, Taff Bargoed, Thomastown Park and Aberfan Cemetery. This year has seen the first significant spend on children's playgrounds, the first in many years, and it includes a 5-year plan of refurbishments, which has already begun with the first of our 4 new sites due to be completed in March and April of this year. The bereavement services section continues to provide a sensitive and professional service for our community needs, and a new garden of rest has been completed in Pants Cemetery and is due to open in the spring. Our planning department has received the greatest number of applications in the last 8 years. 99.7% of all planning applications were determined within the 8-week statutory period. And I have to say we have been one of the best performing Welsh local planning authorities. Ultimately, an efficient and effective responsive planning department is essential in the delivery of improvements to the priority areas for the council, with some very exciting new residential developments underway, including affordable housing. Corporate property services. The new corporate asset management plan sets out the council's vision, where the property portfolio is aligned to corporate priorities and service requirements, and of course, where appropriate, investment is made in capital projects. The town is also leading on a number of exciting projects, including the implementation of agile working, the acquisition of St Tidville's shopping centre, and the disposal of various development sites. Under housing and regeneration, we of course have the redevelopment of Murtha Tidville Leisure Centre and the skate park. In 2021, it was agreed that the council would lead on the redevelopment of Murtha Tidville Leisure Centre. The council quickly commissioned a leading leisure sector development company, Alliance Leisure, in order to bring both the main and learner pools back into use, whilst also redeveloping the splash pool and changing rooms. And we have some news on that coming out within the next couple of weeks. In addition, there will also be a refocus of potentially bringing a newly redesigned skate park closer to the leisure centre building. Let's talk about sporting infrastructure then. Over the year, the department has been integral in supporting a number of organisations in redeveloping their sporting infrastructure. Officers have assisted the likes of Pendarren Boys and Girls Club in accessing nearly £600,000 to install a new 3G pitch with floodlights. They've also assisted Murtha Town FC with the replacement of their 3G pitch. And in Cabinet just this afternoon, we voted for the removal of grass pitch maintenance fees in the order of £40,000 up to 2025-2026 when it will be reviewed. The Active Murtha team has supported physical activity providers, including sports clubs, social enterprises, freelancers and private businesses to successfully apply for over 400,000 of external investment. So let's move on to the Murtha Tidville Town Centre Master Plan development. As part of the next stage of the Town Centre redevelopment, officers have worked with Welsh Government, Transport for Wales and the Valleys Task Force to create an integrated master plan. This will ensure that the new bus and rail investments create an integrated transport solution that will facilitate an exciting new phase of regeneration for Murtha Tidville. Over £6.5 million has been secured from the Welsh Government's Transforming Towns programme to deliver key physical regeneration projects. One includes the former YMCA redevelopment. All funding has been secured for the redevelopment of the former YMCA into 10 office spaces, and the key funders supporting that are the National Heritage Fund, Welsh Government Building and Future Programmes, Welsh Government Transforming Towns, and of course the Council. The Kavatha Heritage Area with the Valleys Regional Park linked to the Valleys Task Force, Welsh Government announced in 2018 that £7 million was available for the development of 9 Discovery Gateway sites across South East Wales. Kavatha Park was identified as a key Discovery Gateway site and funding was secured for the redevelopment of the Canolfan into a cafe and improved community facility. The funding also included adjacent areas including the toilet, changing provision and resurfacing of the play area. The Canolfan reopened in September 21 and has a positive impact on Kavatha Park and a real benefit for its users. The splash pad redevelopment will be completed in March 2022. The Kavatha plan, of course, continues momentum with world-renowned architects Ian Ritchie being appointed to lead an international award-winning team of consultants to develop the master plan. The team has created a 20-year plan for Kavatha Park and its castle, and the 190-acre park and an area west of the River Taff that includes, of course, the historic furnaces. The Kavatha Foundation, to deliver the projects, has been working closely with Murtha Tidville County Borough Council and the Leisure Trust in relation to key developments. And of course, we opened the new Murtha Tidville bus interchange in 2021. In recognition of its high standard, the council has recently received 3 prestigious national awards: Client of the Year by the Chartered Institute of Buildings, the Sustainability Award by the Construction Excellence Wales, and an award for planning excellence by the Royal Town Planning Institute. The old bus station, of course, was demolished in December 2021, and future development on this area is currently being considered. Just briefly talking about the Cardiff Capital Regional Transport Authority, this council continues to manage and facilitate 2 multi-million-pound schemes to develop and provide delivery programmes on behalf of the region. Metro Plus is, of course, a major capital investment transportation scheme aligned to the current transformational projects on the Core Valleys Line railway network, with local development focused on both Merthyr Tydfil and Pentrabach railway stations. The Welsh Government has rolled out a variety of grant programmes, as we've said, to aid business recovery, and we have successfully delivered a number of grant schemes, including Startup, Lockdown Discretionary, to name but a few. The Valleys Task Welsh Government grant will help us commit finances to support the Transforming Towns agenda, and of course specifically to support smaller town centres within the Valleys Task boundary. Ethnic housing. Since COVID-19 pandemic outbreak, of course, housing and homelessness services have seen an unprecedented increase in demand for services. Changes made to the Housing Wales Act 2014 as a result of the pandemic has resulted in all persons presenting as homeless being offered temporary accommodation, with a further duty to secure permanent accommodation thereafter. In light of the significant uplift in the social housing grant, the housing strategy team will look outside of our traditional 4 partners to maximise our future development programme to the fullest. We have, of course, worked with the Glynmill Gypsy Traveller site, and since the site lease was renewed, Merthyr Tydfil have secured another 500,000 to redevelop the amenity blocks with a long-term vision and master plan for the redevelopment of the whole site. Under employability, our employability team have been very busy this year, continuing to support local people remotely, but also making a start on supporting back into the community settings as COVID restrictions start to ease. The team have secured 510 jobs for people since the pandemic started, and Merthyr Tydfil County Borough Council also successful in securing Kickstart Gateway representative status and funding to create 95 jobs internally and with external businesses. Our Aspire Shared Apprenticeship programme is now in its 4th year of delivery, and I am pleased to report over 48 local people have secured apprenticeship opportunities in advanced manufacturing and engineering with support with partners such as Merthyr College and Tidville Training Consortium. Our public protection services have remained at the forefront of the pandemic response. And of course, environmental health will now lead on fly tipping enforcement, with plans to integrate this service with our public protection partners such as CCTV to provide a whole council approach to tackling the fly tipping issue. Officers are also returning to routine food safety work as part of our recovery plan. Our Human Resources team obviously has a wealth of skills and experience across its most valuable resource, our workforce. Our employees have been working with partners to provide services that meet the needs of our residents in delivering our wellbeing objectives and priorities. And of course, our health and safety team have been responsible for ensuring employee understanding of their responsibility and ensure we follow all regulations and guidance. Under policy and improvement, we are continuing to work closely with all areas in the council in responding to the pandemic and continuing to transform our services to improve in meeting our wellbeing objectives. We continue to implement our Siameirament principle about promoting the Welsh language, and we've encouraged online learning to support this during the pandemic. With regards to the RTI, and we've had a number of workshops on this, we've continued to support the organisation in relation to the RTI, and the communication strategy has been developed to ensure that all stakeholders understand the required areas of transformation and the progress made in each of the service areas by our comms team, including, of course, all of the communication events and engagement that they have done. And they've been at the forefront of keeping our residents and businesses informed and engaged during these unprecedented times, including effective consultation, which was reported at scrutiny just yesterday. Democratic Services, Murtha Tidville found itself in an atypical position of running a combined election, not just in the terms of COVID restrictions, but with extensive legislative changes, and they have been supporting all officers and obviously holding candidate briefings as well. The Registrar's Service has also faced many challenges during the pandemic, and operational processes had to be in place to the easements in the Coronavirus Act 2020 to ensure that we continued the registrations of births and deaths throughout the lockdown. The Mayor's Office has been supported throughout the ongoing pandemic. However, no traditional events were able to take place in 2021. And on that note, Mr. Mayor, I would like to thank all members, officers and staff of this authority for their continued support in such difficult times in delivering high-performing services for the citizens of Murtha Tidville and the County Borough. I now have pleasure in moving the recommendations within the body of the report. At 2.1, the council tax increase of 1% for 2022-23. For the band D of £1,746.27 for the County Borough be approved. The budget requirement to 2.2 of £143 million for 2022-23, the net revenue budget be approved. At 2.3, the additional temporary accommodation homelessness provision costs of £357,000 for 22-23 be approved. The utilisation at 2.4 of £703,000 for of 2021-22 projected revenue surplus outturn be approved. At 2.5, that the co-funded capital programme of £72 million, £72.875 million for the period of 22-23 to 25-26 be approved. At 2.6, that the medium-term financial plan 22-23 to 25-26, including, of course, the capital strategy report 2022-23 and the Treasury Management Strategic Statement 22-23 be also approved. And at 2.7, that the prudential indicators contained within the medium-term financial plan be approved with authorisation for managing and monitoring the authorised limit and operational boundary delegated to our Chief Financial Officer. At 2.8, that the minimum revenue provision statement for 22-23 as detailed in paragraph 8.4 of this report be approved. And at 2.9, that the Chief Finance's Officer's comments relating to the robustness of the estimates and adequacy of reserves also be noted. I so move, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And perhaps you'd like to have a glass of water. Well, Councillor Chris Davis seconds it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, obviously, I'm pleased to second the recommendations, and in doing so, I reserve the right to speak on this matter.
Okay, so thank you. So Councillor Clive Jones has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've got two questions. The first one is under the heading Capital Scheme Proposals, page 105, and it's item 16. And that refers to the Kavatha Heritage Area, and it says this request is being made to support the delivery of the Kavatha Plan, but primarily to secure funding to undertake urgent repair work within Kavatha Castle and to support the relocation of the collection. Can someone confirm that this council has been successful in obtaining £1 million to cover repairs to the roof? As I understand, it's leaking in several places.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody on the meeting that can answer that for Councillor Jones, please?
Yes, I'd have to confirm that, I'm afraid, not the top of my head. I'm not exactly certain, so I'll have to look that up and to make sure that is the case. So I'll follow that up with an email and to all councillors.
Thank you, Steve. My second question is on page 109, and it's item 51. And it's referring to Pengandy. It says, as site owner, this council has an obligation to remove significant levels of contaminants left behind from operations conducted by the outgoing lessee. HDR has recently secured the necessary permits from Natural Resource Wales to progress the remedial works prior to the disposal or alternative use of the ward. In previous meetings, when we discussing the budget, my understanding was this work would cost at least £1 million to complete. Can you tell me, because with COVID and other things, costs and labour charges have increased, if that £1 million has gone up, and if so, what is the figure? And when will this work begin, and how long will it take? And can someone explain to me what the initials HDR refers to? Thank you.
Yes, again, if I could come in there. It is the case that overall we had a contract price of around £1.35 million. And as far as I'm aware, that is still the case. In respect of the works carried out, the works have now commenced, and we're expecting that all the waste should be removed from the site then at the end of next financial year. So hopefully by the end of 22-23, then that waste will be cleared. In respect of what HDR stands for, that's the name of the company. And again, from memory, the company is Hampshire Demolition and Recycling.
Thank you, Steve, very much.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Jones. Any further questions? No, Councillor Andrew Barry, then, please.
Thanks, Mayor. First question, Steve, is on the medium-term financial plan and the 1%. The 1%, you've flat profiled that through for the 4 years. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right. As part of the TFP, and to give everybody a feel as to the sorts of funding gaps that we face within going forward, because that is the recommendation for the council tax increase for next year. That's then being kept as it's like an indicative council tax increase over the term of the MTFP.
Yeah. The difficulty I've got with that, Steve, is we've lobbied hard over the years to get some indicative settlements for the following years, and we've got it this year, which is great. What I find bizarre is that we have only flat profiled as a consequence our 1%. Now, I've never known a year where council tax has been the same in any 1 year. So I would have thought it would have made sense in this year in particular if we had profiled our council tax accordingly for the next 2 or 3 years, as we lobbied so hard to Welsh Government. So, for example, the year after an election, typically the council tax goes up considerably. If we put the council tax up on a profile along that basis, and say for the next 3 years, it went to 4%, 3.5%, we could be reducing the deficit as shown in a medium-term financial plan by £2, £3, even £4 million. So wouldn't you have thought it was a reasonable suggestion to profile our council tax the way we've asked Welsh Government to profile the revenue settlement?
I think it's the case because it's the word indicative, but that is what we've used as the estimate. I think you can't really tell where we are going to be standing at this time next year. So I think that include a council tax estimate above the +1 at this stage because nothing has been approved. So I think it's the case that that's why it's been kept at that +1 over the term of the MTFP. But then of course, that by the time we come to setting the budget and council tax increase for the following year, then that will be the time then where Cabinet and Council will then agree as to what the council tax increase would be for that following year.
Yeah,
at this stage, we can't tell what the economy is going to be like in a year's time.
Councillor Chris Davies, did you want to come in on that?
Yeah,
point?
Mr. Mayor, if I could, because there shouldn't be news to Councillor Barry in terms of the profiling of council tax setting in respect of the MTFP, because if Councillor Barry goes back to previous iterations of the MTFP, when we've set council tax at 3.55%, it's followed across the course. And with respect to officers, the setting of the council tax is not a matter for the officers of the council, it's a matter for the members. So Steve is doing what has always been the way that we've set out the MTFP in this council. I think Council's been asked to consider a recommendation this evening in respect to council tax. Obviously, we're around the corner from a local government election. It'll be for whoever's the next administration. If they wish to make changes to the way that the MTFP is currently calculated and set out, that'll be a matter for the new leader, new cabinet member and new administration to deal with. But there shouldn't be any surprises in terms of how officers have set this across. I take on board your point about the position we finally find ourselves in, Councillor Barry, in terms of having indicative settlements for future years, but that doesn't marry, of course, that because we've got indicative settlements, so we should do anything different other than set the council tax rate on what council is being asked to recommend and support this evening, not to swap and change that, because that isn't for the officers to do. That'll be for the members to decide.
Okay, thank you,
Thank you,
Councillor
Chris.
Davies. Back to Councillor Barry.
However,
with respect,
the medium-term financial plan is something that is used as a big stick against us. Is used as a big stick against us, and it would make sense for us to do that as we lobbied so hard for those figures. We'll leave that where it is. Another question, Caris, is going back to what you said earlier about the figures. So are you saying that there can be no amendment tonight?
That's right. You can't move an amendment tonight. What you can do is make whatever speeches you want to do and say whatever you want to say about what you feel should be the rate, but the figures are calculated on the basis of a 1% rise. And so if you proposed an amendment tonight, you would be voting on something where members don't have the figures that show the full implication of that should they vote in favour of it. So what we would have to do is vote on the recommendation that's put forward tonight. Should that fall because members are not satisfied that that's the right rate, then Steve's team are going to have to recalculate on the basis of whatever other suggestions may be made, and we'll have to hold that matter over and have another meeting. We would hope to be able to do it as quickly as tomorrow, but that's a matter for how quickly Steve's team can recalculate and then deal with that then.
Okay, so are you saying there can be an amendment or there can't be an amendment?
Say again, there cannot be an amendment this evening. If you want to make a suggestion of something that you would propose, you can do that, but you can't make an amendment. So if you wanted to say, I would be saying, I think we should be going to +4, you could say that, but you can't propose it as an amendment tonight. Somehow, Steve's team have got to know what figures anybody is suggesting, because they've got to recalculate all of the figures based on that. What you can't do is ask this council to vote on something tonight that they don't know the full implications of.
So the difficulty is, what would you suggest the mechanism is to get us to this point then? Because I'm a little confused, because the only contribution we didn't make a contribution. We had a meeting with the leader and deputy leader where we were told it was 1%. So there was no suggestion that we could make any alteration to that. Now, if that's the case, we're dealing in a situation where what the lead administration say is as is, and there's no contribution from us, which I'm presuming that's the way we're going, is it?
Can I come in there, seeing as I was mentioned, monitoring officer, to explain?
But perhaps if I just deal with the point that Councillor Barry is making. The point is that if there is sufficient backing to say that members don't want what is recommended in this report, then they will vote against the recommendations in this report. Then the figures will have to be recalculated. All that we're trying to do is prevent a situation where somebody proposes something where you don't know the full implications of it, and members are asked to vote on something which could then be challenged because they would be voting on something where they don't have all of the information about it.
So would we be, let's say we wanted to change it from 1% to 0, okay?
Right.
So how would that work then? Are you saying that we'd have to say we propose that the meeting goes on because we fundamentally disagree with the fact that we've set it at 1%?
No, what would happen is members will debate that. They will debate the recommendation which is put forward. As part of that debate, you would say, I consider that it should be at 0%, and on that basis, I do not support it being at 1%. If members are convinced by that argument, they will vote against the recommendation that it's 1%, and we will then have to carry that matter over to a meeting tomorrow where members are presented with the figures that allow them to consider what would happen if they voted in favour of 0%. You could then propose that as an amendment. Yeah.
Right, so it can go as an amendment as normal. It can be voted on. If it's carried, it would extend the meeting through to tomorrow.
No, because you can't vote on an amendment tonight because members don't know the consequences of that amendment. All that can happen tonight is you vote on what is in the papers. But
and the motion falls.
Yes, if the motion falls, we will then have to present a series of different options tomorrow, and those different options will include what you may be suggesting now is a potential for a 0%.
Yeah.
And then you'd have the figures, so then tomorrow you would be able to vote on that. Does that make sense?
No, I'm losing it now. So what would I need to do to propose 0%?
You can talk tonight about whether you do or don't want 0%.
Or against.
And then you vote for or against the 1% that is being proposed.
And we support it.
Yeah.
Right. So we just speak about 0%.
Yeah, you can say that if you want to, but you can't vote for or against it tonight. You vote for or against 1% because those are the figures that you've got. All right.
So, and it would just be a case of, does this stand on 1% or not, is what you're saying then?
Tomorrow.
Tonight, the council...
On the motion as it stands, I mean.
Yes, the council will vote on the motion as it stands.
Yeah.
And if that falls, we would have to have another meeting tomorrow. If it doesn't fall, it will go through on the basis of 1%.
Okay, lovely.
All right.
Thanks. Comprehensive, thanks.
Thank you. Can Lisa say
yes, please.
Of course, Harris?
If I could, just as a matter of clarification, what Councillor Barry just said is naturally factually correct. I had a number of meetings with all leaders and their deputies invited into it, where we discussed council tax, and it was the suggestion that we were going to go with 1%. That was open for discussion. During the meeting, Councillor O'Neill, in fairness, did have a discussion with us then, and I had no further representation from Councillor Barry or Councillor O'Neill or the community independents in relation to discussions around that 0%, none at all. They were also offered an opportunity to discuss it with the Chief Financial Officer as well. Thank you.
Okay, so we're still on questions at this point. So have you any further questions, Councillor Barry?
No, that's fine for the moment, thanks.
No, okay, thank you. So Councillor Julian Amos then, please.
I believe I was first, Malcolm.
I've got Julian first on my screen. Councillor Davis, his hand's been raised for some time.
Well, I'm as bemused as Councillor Barry, really. are you saying, Caris, that I am being very, very thick at the moment. Does this, there's no way we can amend it. I understand what you've said now. It's either yay or nay on this one, but we can, in saying nay, we can then automatically proceed to a meeting tomorrow. Is that, am I with you to that point?
Yes, because we have to set this figure. We have to set it by, I believe, the 11th of March. And therefore, given all the bills that have to be raised and all of the work that has to be done once it's set, we will have to have another meeting. Have to have that as quickly as Steve and his team can formulate revised figures based on other possible permutations of the figures.
Right. So we proceed. What I don't quite understand is, from what I understand, that what you say is if we vote this down tonight, we have to go to yet another meeting tomorrow. But what happens then? Can any amendments be put to then? And Councillor Barry mentioned 0 or 1 no, as you mentioned 4 or 5. At that meeting tomorrow, can one of us
members will need very urgently to tell Steve and his team any suggestion that they're going to propose, because you can't vote on something when you don't know what the consequences are.
I see that point. So really, if after having this full debate here, I want to say, well, I'd like it to be this rate or that rate, and perhaps Councillor O'Neill or Councillor Barry might say, well, I'd like it to be this rate. So what we're saying is that Steve has got to go back to his office and come up with a whole new set of scenarios to match whatever suggestion we've made, not amendment, but just pure suggestions. Because it occurs to me that's an awful lot of work for Steve.
Well, it really is, and that's why all the work goes in advance, to trying to get to a point where when we come to this meeting, we know what members are saying. So we're not in that position, and therefore, yes, there's going to be an awful lot of work. I would hope that members, if they were going to suggest any alternative rate, will keep that to any reasonable suggestions so that it minimises the amount of work that Steve and his team have got to do. But that's the only way we're going to be able to.
I hear what you say, Caris, and obviously we take proper cognizance of view and knowledge of local government law, and I don't mean that sarcastically, but it seems to me that tonight we have something of a deadline to set the council tax, and I can't help feeling it's the meeting is a bit late in the day, because I, for one, I'm not sure, but other members, what with the extra work for Steve and all that, we've got basically a gun to our heads really to sort it out tonight, and I'm not sure that I would say that best serves the democratic process of something as important as setting the council tax.
Well,
but that's my view.
I'm sure that's right, Councillor Amos, but that's really why we try to get to this meeting, on the basis that everybody has put forward whatever alternatives they want and discussed them with the relevant officers so that we know. And unfortunately, if there are going to be proposals of something different, that's what's put us in this position.
Okay, well, I won't drag this out.
No.
I haven't, and it's not the leaders or Councillor Davies' fault. I didn't get involved in the discussions. I assume Councillor Roberts and Councillor O'Neill and Councillor Barry did, according to Councillor Mitten. They did. So I accept that. But then, didn't, out of that, perhaps the leader can answer me this one, out of those meetings then, didn't any suggestions flow that could have been communicated to Steve. So instead of us facing with yay or nay to what's in front of us, we could have had a much fuller report, tremendous amount of work for Steve, saying, well, you can go for this, you can go for naught, you can go for 1, you can go for 2, you can go for 5 or whatever. That's what should have happened. And am I right in saying it didn't?
No, Councillor Amos, I'll just politely remind you that you did have the opportunity to
Yes,
engage
yeah, I
with
agree.
myself and the leader, and thank you for noting that. An email was also sent as well, you know, with regards to council tax and engaging with the Chief Financial Officer. I will also remind you that none of this process has changed since the time when you were also deputy leader of a previous administration, and the same goes for Councillor Barry, really, in relation to that when he was Cabinet Member for Finance. This is the process, a well-known process for a number of years as far as how this council has its business. So as leader of your own group at the moment, Councillor Amos, you had every opportunity to suggest.
Lisa, I'm not complaining about that.
No, I'm just clarifying what you said, Councillor Amos. You just asked if I could reply. I'm just clarifying that for you. You know, there was every opportunity to present a different figure, to ask for those finances, and I did send a table of finances from 0% to 5% to all of the leaders and the deputies back in January.
Fine, thank you. Just a point of correction, Lisa. In the last administration, I wasn't the deputy leader. Councillor Rogers was. I'm sure Tony will jump in soon.
Sorry, Julian, you wouldn't be. You were a cabinet member, and hence it still hasn't changed. But thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Davis, can I just remind everybody we ask long questions at this point? So have you got a question, please, Councillor Davis?
Yeah. Just a question for Steve. So obviously, Steve, if we go from 0%, 1% to 0%, yeah, it equals about, I don't know, between 250,000, 270,000, something like that, yeah, to 1%. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right. It's 251,000, I think the figure is, yeah. So
obviously, with the it wouldn't be just a simple maths of where people think is 200,000 is not a lot when you got a budget of 140,000, but obviously then that 0% got to go on to the mid-financial term plan, yeah?
Yes.
So that means then whatever council tax is next year and the year after, as in how many properties we got, it means we could get less money or more money.
You've also got the just following report as well, which looks at what the council tax means for each of the bandings. So all those figures will have to change as well if the council tax increase of +1 is not accepted.
Yeah, what I'm saying, Steve, is so in the long term, it might seem it's £251,000 this year, but over the term of the plan, it could mean over $1 million or whatever. So this is why you need to refigure what you do, because it's not just about today and the 250,000. It's obviously over a couple of years, and this is what you got to figure out.
Exactly, because there will be a knock-on effect then going into the following financial year, and also then into the term of the MTFP. Yes, so you're exactly right.
Thank you, Steve. I just wanted to check. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Davis. Councillor Tony Rogers, please.
Can I be very brief? This is a question and a support to the monitoring officer. People know when you come to the meeting of setting the rate is in front of you, and it's for or against. Now, it's up to you to vote, whichever you do. Councillor Amos, I'm surprised at you. You've been here about 12 years now. You should know this, and I've been many, many more than most of you. You set in the rate, you put it up, you vote for or against, and if it's against, we'll take it from there. Come on, now, let's be fair and be an adult about it. You are learning. You're a lot more to learn, but you can do it. Listen to the monitoring officer now. Let's get on with the business.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Rogers. Councillor David Hughes, please.
Thank you, Tony, for that, but I'd like to ask a question. Steve, is it my understanding, I'm glad Councillor Clive Jones brought up about Pengan Fee, that 1.3 million pound will come back into the revenue grant?
It is the case, yes, that we've got that monies at the present time. It's set aside. But as the waste is cleared then from the site over the next 15 months, then yes, we will be able to, and that money then will be able to come back into our accounts, yes.
So what I'm trying to say, maybe not very well, well, if we get that money back into the account, surely 250,000 would be put back into the account then, yeah. So to make it 0% would make much difference to the financial position of the council.
I would just like to basically, if I could raise again, that there is obviously a knock-on impact then in going forward into the following years of the MTFP. So that's the actual reason why is that you can't just look at the actual impact of the next financial year, but you have to assess then what that impact is across the term of the MTFP.
Yeah, I realise that, Steve. But what I'm saying is the 1.3 would be coming into our money. We having that money back from coming into our revenue grant, isn't it? That's to add. Because I was under the impression that the work had already started a lot sooner than what we're saying. I thought it would have been finished by this year. That was the indication that was given us.
Yes, it's my understanding is that the works are ongoing, but my understanding is that it will be completed in next financial year, and it could be towards the latter part of that financial year. So, but as the waste is cleared, then the monies which are set aside that then can be actually released. But now, obviously, going forward, you've all seen the funding caps that we're currently showing as part of the MTFP. So obviously, it's any monies that we have back, it has to be used wisely then in going forward as well.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you for the answer.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Andrew Barry.
Yeah, can I just ask you on the capital side of things, Steve? Do you know the money for the what was Storm Dennis? We've had many storms since, but you know the 4 million that we've already spent. Have we had that back from Welsh Government yet? And there's an indicative 8 million that's due to be spent and returned. My question really is, of that capital monies, is there any revenue money attached to that, or is it a percentage of it this set aside for revenue, or is it purely capital money?
It's mostly capital. From the revenue point of view, again, if I recall, we're talking about something very small, and I think it's about £50,000, I think, of revenue costs there, but the rest of it is capital monies. And we have had a notification that the actual expenditure that we have incurred in this financial year, that has been supported now through that Welsh, through that flooding grant.
Have we received it yet, Steve?
I think we have received it because we've certainly had that award letter anyway.
Lovely, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Before we move on to comments, are there any further questions? No one is indicating, so we move on to comments then, please. Councillor Jeremy Davis is first, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I sort of agree this year we should have, well, I understand with the council tax and the MTV plan and what have you. I think we should have gone for a 0% council tax increase, because obviously with everything that's happened lately with the pandemic and electricity bills, gas bills going through the roof and everything, I think it was just 1 year where we could have said to the residents and that. come on, we do care about them. Do you know what I mean? Let's do it at 0% and we worry about next year when it comes to it. And we'll do it from there.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Davis. Councillor Declan Salmon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We're facing a cost of living crisis this year, a perfect storm, if you will. Rising food prices, rising fuel costs and energy bills going through the roof now and in the coming months. We as elected members have to be mindful of how all those rises impact the day-to-day lives of residents. We can't influence those other bills that residents are facing, but we can definitely influence council tax bills. We wouldn't be the only local authority to vote for a no increase. Bridgend, Neath Port Talbot and Blaenau Gwent have all said no to a council tax increase. And going forward, we and every other local authority need Labour and Plaid Cymru to make good on their promise of making council tax fairer for everyone and to do this as soon as possible. I'm asking members tonight to show your true colours, prove you're listening to residents, not just your party. Vote against a council tax rise tonight. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Councillor David Isaac is next, please.
Yeah, sorry, Mr. Mayor. I think I've preempted what I was going to say to the monitoring officer. My computer dropped out for at least 2 to 3 minutes. I know it's on an important issue like this, but I had no connection whatsoever. So I can't vote on this, I believe.
I'm afraid that's right, Councillor Isaac. I'm sorry.
Yeah, thank you for bringing it to our attention as well.
Thank you for saying.
Yeah, thank you for being so honest to say that as well. Councillor Darren Roberts, then, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Coming back to the proposal of moving an amendment, this is something that the Labour group tried to do in previous years, and you know, we had the same response from the monitoring officer then as Councillor Barry's had tonight. So at least you're consistent, Carys. I'll give you that. I agree. I mean, in an ideal world, we should be looking at a 0% increase with the cost of living crisis and everything. But, you know, when we were looking at a 3.55, it's fair to say that a drop of 2.55 down to the 1% is a significant decrease. The table on page 40 outlines in pence in real terms what the increase means. And, you know, the statistics show that the majority of the properties in Murtha Tidville are band A and B. So the increase, we're talking about 22 or 26 pence a week. Now, any increase is an increase, and at a time when everything is going up, it all does add up. I get that. But what we can't ignore is the police and crime precept that's going up. You know, we should really be lobbying them, because are we getting value for our money without policing at the moment? Antisocial behaviours on the increase. Are we seeing the footfall? You know, we still need to deliver services for the residents of the county borough. And I think that the £251,000 that we're getting from this 1% can be reinvested into services. So I, for one, along with my deputy, sat down with the leader and the deputy leader to go over the council tax rates. We had an open discussion, which I'm grateful for, and then we took that back to the Labour group for obviously a wider discussion, and then we confirmed our position. So for myself, I think that the 1%, although it's not zero, is fair. Some local authorities are putting up the council tax 4 and 5%, which I think is unfair, but that's a matter for them and their residents. So for me, Mr. Mayor, I think 1% is fair under the circumstances. How we move forward in future years remains to be seen. You know, 1% isn't sustainable, as all members know, with our MTFP. So there will be rises in future years, I'm sure. But I think for this year, 1% is fair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Roberts. Councillor Kevin O'Neill, please.
Yes, almost 5 years ago I was elected, and at that time I was leader. Many of our cabinet members who have served in different groups of independents are here tonight. It was always our policy, always our strategy to listen to the people yeah, to react to the people, but also to be financially prudent, to run our finances properly. Up until December 2021, Andrew Barry has been the consistent force in our finances. And I don't think he should be lectured by others on his ability to run finances, to be quite frank with you. He's revolutionised where we are as far as finances. We're presently in the best place we've been for decades. Yeah, we had a surplus since 2019. We made it known on January the 18th that we were going for and likely to be supporting a 0%. Labour followed with 1%, and the independent leadership followed Labour again with what they wanted, being propped up by Labour again, who've abstained for a number of years previously to make any sort of impact on the council tax. So when we have 8% interest rates, when we have a 30-year high cost of living and £700 extra on fuel bills, we are now talking about 270,000 for our budget. But that money, and you can't have it both ways. You can't say it's not a lot of money, and then you can't say what a terrible time we are with cost of living. You cannot have it both ways. Let me say that everybody knew where we were coming from. We did have a meeting with Councillor Mitten. She said they were going 1%. We said 0%. There wasn't much of a debate, to be quite frank with you. That's where it was. So, you know, make of that what you will. The brand of the independence is damaged, but the consistency in failing to stick with our guiding principle when we were elected originally 5 years ago about listening and responding, not to be propped up by Labour, to make the decisions yourself, to have the courage of your decisions. I say again, listen to the people, make the right decision. 0% in this time more than ever, it is a no-brainer. That's what we should be doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Neill. Councillor Julian Amos, please.
Mr. Mayor, I believe I'm before Councillor Amos.
Yeah, but you'd close the debate, Councillor.
Oh, sorry, apologies. I do apologise.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The public understandably hold us responsible for the council tax they pay. They do not, I don't think, well, the majority do not take account of the impact of Welsh Government settlements or the South Wales Police Precept. In the past, successive administrations have struggled to balance the books by a combination of cuts and tax increases, which most of the, I have to say, people I talk to, most of the public either do not understand, resent, or both. Quite understandably, they say, why should we pay more money for fewer services? Bear with you for a second. For fewer services. As Gwendolyn in The Importance of Being Earnest remarked, there are times when it becomes less of a pleasure, but more a duty to speak one's mind. Turning to the matter of this year's council tax, we need to go back to the perception of the people we represent. As Councillor O'Neill alluded to, the vast majority face unparalleled increases in the cost of food, fuel, energy, and in fact the entire cost of living, set against a real terms cut in their salaries and benefits. For many years before the age of austerity, Murtha Tidville has been the most economically deprived county in Wales. All too many of the people we represent are having to choose between eating or heating. They have viewed us in the past as the villains of the peace, although we weren't. We were just passing on the misery of successive Welsh Government settlement decreases. We now have the opportunity to be the saviours of their day. The saviours of their day by passing on to them the benefits of more generous Welsh Government settlements. It's for this reason, and I appreciate what Carrie said earlier on, I cannot move amendments, so I will make a suggestion. It's for this reason I cannot support a single piece penny increase in the council tax this year. It may not amount to much, reducing it from 1 to 0%, but it will send out a message loud and clear to the people that we are a caring council, we listen to them, we recognise what they are going through. They are one of the most deprived counties in Wales right now. Finally, I would remind members, but it has been raised tonight, that whatever we do, whatever rate we set, they will still face a rise in their bills of 5%. So I think we should take that on board. I cannot move an amendment, but I do not agree with this rate, and I shall be voting against it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Amos. Councillor Gareth Lewis is next, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think we all recognise that it is a cost of living crisis facing all residents throughout the county borough. Food is going up, fuel is going up, gas bills, electric bills, and national insurance will go up from April. I think, however, we do need to recognise that Welsh Government are providing a cash payment of £150 to all council tax band payers A to D. And in addition to that, they are providing a £200 winter fuel support payment to the most vulnerable and the lowest paid. So, admittedly, that may not be enough to offset the stark increase in bills. However, it is recognition. Welsh Government have recognised the cost of living, and I'm pleased they've done so.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Lewis. Councillor Brent Carter is next, please.
Yeah, thanks for that, Mr. Mayor. I tend to agree with a lot of my colleagues. It's not something which you want to do lightly, is put up council tax, be it from 0.5%, 1%, 2%, 3%, 4%, 5%, whatever it's going to be. But I think where we are looking at 1% is quite fair compared to where it was at 3.5%. Interestingly, what I found out tonight is what the former leader Kevin O'Neill has stated, that the independent group is damaged. I just, I wonder why that is, I suppose. And he also waxes lyrical about how they turned the council's finances around. But let's put a little bit more meat on the bones and put it into perspective. From 2012 to 2017, the Labour then administration had a -7% reduction in the settlement. From 2017 to 2022, the independent administration had a +19 increase in the settlement from Welsh Government, a total swing of 26%. Therefore, the real question is, did the increase in settlement make a difference? I think we all know the answer for that. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Carter. Councillor Ian Thomas, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On the question of consulting the public, correct me if I'm wrong, but the council had a public consultation, and 2 questions that were asked were, do you want to maintain a level of services as a priority over reducing council tax? And the answer was that the public wanted to maintain the level of public services. And the other question is, do you want the rate of council tax to be equal or less than 3.5%? And they voted for less than 3.5%. I know it's not pleasant, but the 1% is well below the original 3.5%. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Councillor Shrell Jago, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to make some points around the police precept. As Councillor Roberts alluded to earlier, some comments around the police precept and how that we shouldn't be supporting that. I sit on the Police and Crime Commissioners panel as the representative for Murtha Tidville, and I attended their precept meeting last month. There were several presentations focused around the pressures on the force, painting a bleak picture of how they were facing up to 40% in real term cuts from policing grants, whilst the demand on police services continues to increase to by almost 63%. Of that demand, though, it was interesting that lots of it had nothing to do with combating crime. The Commissioner, Alan Michael's statement was focused around being determined not to withdraw from local communities or to stop tackling low-level offending or to miss opportunities for prevention. So neighbourhood policing and community safety was what he kept referring back to as being at the heart of his strategy moving forward. When I looked at the community consultations that were done by the Police and Crime Commissioner, it showed that 55% of respondents were not willing to contribute more towards their council tax to support policing in South Wales. So the challenges that I presented at the meeting painted a slightly different picture to what was being painted by the Police and Crime Commissioner and his team. I felt that the perception in Murtha Tidville, based on the information that I had taken to the meeting, was that the police presence is almost non-existent in our communities. There is a lack of visible policing. There is a lack of response to 101 calls, and the whole 101 system is broken. I went on to complain that there was no interface and local councillors were filling the gaps for policing. As an example, I referred to the South Wales Police website, where you should be able to go into each electoral ward, look at the data to determine who your neighbourhood policing team is and who your PCSOs are. These pages have no details and have been like this since November. I've been checking every month. They said that they'd look into this as a priority moving forward. The precept that was proposed by the Police and Crime Commissioner was the proposal for a 5% increase. As the representative for Merthyr Tydfil County Borough Council, I explained within the meeting that I could not support this proposal. I explained that we supported the proposal last year and was promised that residents would see more community policing, higher response rates and overall better service. I didn't feel, based on the information given by my constituents and others, that this was delivered when feeding back. The presentations given to the panel were all very informative and provided a great level of detail of the significant work that is going on within South Wales Police. However, I felt that the perceptions were very different within local communities on the ground, and so advised them that they need to work on changing these perceptions if they believe that this is not the reality. Lots of the communities across Merthyr Tydfil were complaining over the Christmas period when the neighbourhood policing teams were disbanded to assist response teams. Communities felt isolated and not supported by the police. The proposal of the 5% increase was put to a vote at the last meeting in February. It went through as a yes. 6 people voted for it and 4 people voted against it. For the record, me as the local representative from Merthyr Tydfil County Borough Council voted no. I would just like that noted. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Jago. Councillor Andrew Barry, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just in relation to what Sharella said there, it's an incredibly difficult question. I understand the lack of resource there, but I think we couldn't have a better councillor in terms of representation. You know, what she said there is absolutely socially correct and very eloquently put. So thanks, Sharella. Going back to the comments that Councillor Carter made earlier. Look, of course, the increase in the revenue support grant matters, but I can't believe that there's no credit given within what's said and continually said by Labour about where the staff of this authority stand. Look at the transformation within social services, understanding now their demand profile, understanding their accountability to the budget process has been tremendous over the last few years. all departments have pulled it together. And in terms of the decisions we've had to make difficult decisions. Councillor Carter may have forgotten that we had to go through a VAR process, and we made difficult decisions when we needed to make difficult process. And it's difficult to be lectured by by someone like Councillor Carter and the Labour group when over the years that we've had to deal with these finances. We just mind you where Labour were in terms of the yes or no vote on the past years of this very vote tonight. In 2017-18, abstained, didn't vote yes or no on the budget. 2018-19, abstained, didn't vote yes or no on the budget. 2019-20, didn't vote yes or no on about 3 years running. And when we got through the difficult years, bearing in mind in 2019-20, when we started to turn a surplus of £1.89 million, and then we turned a surplus of £4.464 million, and now there's a surplus of £1.5 million. Only this last year has the Labour group decided to vote on the budget. Thank you very much for getting involved, but I don't think your residents would thank you for abstaining from what is the most important vote of the year in this council. And I hope tonight they're going to vote either yes or no and buck the trend over the last few years. In terms of what Councillor Darren Roberts was saying about some councils have put council tax up by 4%. Yeah, they have. Blaenau Gwent to put in a considerable amount on their council tax, but they're only doing that because the Welsh Labour government have turned their back on them in terms of their need being high on deprivation levels and the highest council tax in Wales along with ourselves, and put them 22 out of 22 when they gave them their revenue grant. So disgraceful turn of events when they're supporting the most affluent of our authorities in Wales, where they support Vale Glamorgan and Monmouth with an additional 11 million and 18 million respectively. So there's the reality of finances. So for Councillor Carter to decry what's happened in this authority over the last 4 or 5 years is a disgrace, really, not acknowledging the people who've done the work, the councillors, the officers, the managers, and just to say it's the revenue grant, very base, very, very base. Difficult to take, to be honest, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Barry. Carys, I see that Councillor Roberts and Councillor Carter have their hands raised, but they've already contributed to comments to this debate. So are they allowed to comment further?
Only if there is a specific clarification, and that's not just to argue back again. That is, if there is a clarification, if they feel something has been misunderstood.
Is that the case, Councillor Roberts?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, just to correct Councillor Barry, really, he quite rightly said in 2018 that the Labour group abstained. The reason for that was there was a new administration. They put their budget forward, and we thought it would be best for them to deliver on their budget and give them the free rein to do so. So that was the reason for that. In 2019, we tried to move an amendment to the 5.99% increase that the independent administration put forward for council tax. We were told that we couldn't, so we abstained on that night and let it go through with the independents supporting their own budget. In 2020, we actually voted in support of the increase, as we did last year. So Councillor Barry's not factually correct when he said we abstained in 3 consecutive years. That's not the case. And I'm sure that officers can go back and check the records and the minutes of the meetings for that. What I would say, however, that over the last this year and last year, we've had far more meaningful discussions with the leader of the council with regards to council tax, and our contribution has been listened to. So, you know, it's a little bit disingenuous to say that, you know, we've been propping up the independents. That's not the case. And, you know, the levels of council tax up has been put forward.
And I'm not sure if we've lost Councillor Roberts. I was about to interrupt and say that that's as far as a personal clarification could possibly go in any event. I'm not sure whether we've lost Councillor Roberts. Mr. Mayor, I think you probably need to move on in any event.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Councillor Barrow, your hand is still raised. Is that from your previous question?
Councillor, if I can just interrupt before we start, was that just legacy, Councillor
Yes.
Barry?
Yes.
Yeah, that's
Yes,
fine. That's fine. Sorry, I don't need to say anything then.
Councillor David Hughes, I don't believe has commented yet on this, has he?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to put it forward tonight that we have a recorded vote so that people in Murtha know who wants to stand by them and go for against this budget tonight. So that's my recommendation.
Okay, thank you. We'll take that when we come to the vote. We'll see if that's supported. Councillor Chris Davis.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Obviously, I've sat, listened, waited patiently as the seconder of this report and as the current, not by choice, mind, Cabinet Member for Governance and Resources. And I think it was inevitable. Every single year, this is probably one of the most emotive reports that comes in front of this council now more than ever, when you consider what we've been through, you know, the impacts of Brexit, COVID, and all of the knock-ons, all of the things that we've heard from members this evening, you know, the impact on utility bills, you know, the cuts to universal credit, the position that people will find themselves in terms of further austerity. But you wouldn't think that we, in the last year of this administration, are coming fast approaching an election, and as great as it is, you know, to hear from you know, members who are now finding themselves in opposition, we it's been talked about listening and responding, and as a council, the council has a duty to do that. As elected members, we have a duty to do that. But on the flip of that, we have duties and we have responsibilities, and coming with the role of being an elected member comes accountability, and sometimes finding ourselves in a position of having to make really difficult decisions. And I think there's some facts that we need to reflect upon tonight. You know, this isn't about posturing. This isn't just about playing to you know, the voters in a few months' time. This is about the harsh reality of what we find ourselves in. You know, for me, it's not an easy thing to you know, be part of a report that puts up 1%. But as already been said tonight, this is a reduction of from 3.55%, on what in reality to our residents, okay, we may serve ourselves well, you know, we may show face in an election, we can say we voted for 0%, but what do we do, members? We kick the council tax can down the road. You know, we prolong the pain for the residents of this county borough, because, you know, you've only got to look and read section 1.5 of the report, and we've got to be based, as well as on emotion, we've got to be based on the facts. We have duty and responsibility as elected members to be responsible now and into the future. It's quite clear, you know, the Chief Finance Officer has written at section 1.5 of the report, sorry, 1.4 of the report, the medium-term financial plan indicates a projected budget deficit of £5.64 million for 22-23. So, Jack, yeah, we may be all right next year, but we've got to find £5.64 million for 22-23, a cumulative budget deficit of £16.41 million for 4 years, from 22-23 to 25-26. You know, there'll be members who are sat here who will have to pick up that responsibility, and I think it's not responsible of us to posture on 0%. It would be, in an ideal world, it'd be amazing if we could go for 0%, but let's look at this from a perspective of, in reality, what was a 9% settlement for Murtha Tidville? Nowhere near it. If we are close to 2 to 3%, we'd be very lucky. Real living wage, pay award, national insurance contributions, additional demands, growth in this council's budget. So, you know, the people who will be hardest hit by this will have some opportunity to access this council's adopted council tax reduction scheme. And let's look at it in reality. As members have already said this evening, there are members here. Sorry, there are majority of the properties in this county borough who are band A, band B, some band C. We benchmark on a band D, but let's look at the band D. You know, for an increase for a band D, sorry, I've lost the figures now. But we're talking less than £20 a week in reality for those band A and band B properties, less than 20 to 30 pence a week. So I think it's really important that we be really pragmatic about this, and you know, we're here absolutely to support the residents of this county borough, but you know, 0% now, what does that equate to for the future years? And we owe it to the residents not to showboat and say 0%. It would be amazing, ideal, but you know, 1% I think is a fair reflection of you know, what we needed to deliver the services for the residents of the county borough. Or otherwise, this council tax can is kicked down the road, and we give now, but people feel the pain further down the line.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Davis. Councillor Carter, your hand was on my screen, it disappeared and it's reappeared again. Did you want to clarify something?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, sorry. Firstly, Caris, I got thrown out myself and Darren with a bit of a power cut, so it's taken now to get back in. So I'm not sure where we stand about voting with regards to this. Well, Darren can speak for himself because I've just had a conversation with him, but I'm not sure where I stand on that. But in connection with the point, yes, I just would like to come back quickly, Mr. Mayor. My point being was purely on what the former leader said, Kevin O'Neill, in respect that Andrew had turned the finances around. It's not a one-person role. It's a collective effort. I'm fully aware, and I'm always commend the officers. They do a fantastic job at the club. So, Councillor Barry, please don't try to twist things to make it look and sound like I wasn't commending that, which is quite a political and naive thing for you to do. And I hope everybody else can see through that. But thanks very much, and that's my point, Mr. Mayor. And Caris, am I okay to vote because I was thrown out with an electrical fault? So
we have to rely on you as members. If you got thrown out and you didn't hear part of the debate, I mean, if you are going to have to form a judgment because you cannot vote if you haven't heard all of the debate. So I have to leave it with you to identify whether you felt that you missed some of the debate, because if you did, then you're not going to be able to vote.
Okay, thanks, Caris.
Caris, can I also say that Councillor Roberts is trying to get back in, was cut out, but he's trying to get back in.
Right, well, and the same is going to apply to him, because if he's not back in now, then he has clearly missed some part of this debate.
Okay, thanks for that, Councillor Jones, for telling us that. Councillor Kevin Gibbs, your hand was raised but it's gone down. Is that just a fault on my screen, or did you want to make a comment?
No, Mr. Mayor, I was just going to advise members that Councillor Roberts had a power cut, but that's already been mentioned, so that's why I took my hand back down. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So in that case, we'll move on to Councillor Lisa Mitten, who will close the debate for us then, please. Oh, sorry, Councillor David Jones just got his hand up in time.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. My comment is about one aspect of the leader's statement, and I'll be very brief about it. I'd like to thank the officers in every department for their excellent work in applying for and achieving the various grants mentioned by the leader. It would seem remiss not to thank the Welsh Government, though, for making these grants available for both the authority and individual businesses. Also for the excellent work done by the various departments for the efficient distribution of the grants made available by the Welsh Government. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Roberts, just to advise us you were back in the meeting?
Yes, I'm back. Apologies for that, Mr. Mayor. We had a bit of a power surge, or the electric went off in the street and came back on it to reboot the server. Question for the monitoring officer, really. I know what you said earlier about if you leave the meeting. I have actually heard the debate. We're on comments now, and I have indicated previously that I support the 1%. So am I allowed to vote, please, monitoring officer?
I've just said while you were reconnecting, it is entirely a matter for you. I can't tell you what you did or didn't hear.
That's
Okay,
fine.
so
Yeah.
you will need to make a decision as to whether
That's
you
fine.
feel able to vote.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm not going to take the easy option and duck out, and I will vote. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Roberts. So, Councillor Elizabeth, and then to close the debate.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll just lower my hand to make sure that that doesn't stay as a legacy hand. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Having listened to everybody this evening, just a couple of points I want to address. First and foremost, I want to absolutely put it on record that we've never denounced anything that Councillor Andrew Barry has done in the last 4 years of working with him. He did do a really good job as the cabinet member for that portfolio, and I've never said anything any different, and I'm sure my colleagues haven't either. With regards to what Councillor Hughes just alluded to, I'm a little bit perplexed because if the community independents or anybody else for that matter are going to abstain or vote against, then that completely contradicts what Councillor Andrew Barry was saying about the Labour Party in a number of years administrations that, you know, they voted against in a couple of years. So just a little bit, again, perplexed by that. Let's stick to some positives here for the moment. And those positives are that we are reducing it from 3.5 because we are listening to the residents. So if members took the time to actually read the consultation feedback, residents want services to continue. Services can only continue if we are financially prudent. By doing it at 1%, and as my colleague Chris Davis said, not kicking the can down the road, by being financially prudent, listening to the residents, doing it as low as we possibly can by 1%, then we are able to continue to provide services. We are still one of the lowest councils for this percentage council tax increase out of the 22 this evening. Councillor Sherelle Yago, absolutely phenomenal councillor. She echoed everything that we wanted to say to the PCC with relation to the preset set by the police. You know, we do need to see more police actually on the streets, and she conveyed that in an excellent professional manner. And that does put that emphasis onto our residents, sorry, that strain onto our residents as well. But I'm sure our residents will understand if they see that service actually improve. I want to address the point made that I said, or me and my deputy, I think it was, said 1%, the community independent said 0%, and as soon as Labour said 1%, we changed our minds. Not the case. Never would be the case. It's a case of having open, professional communication, as Councillor Darren Roberts alluded to earlier. What we did is we listened to our officers. What we did is we listened to the residents. We listened to the residents about what they wanted. We listened to the officers about what we could then still sustain by going at 1%. And then we had open professional discussions. As I said earlier, in answering some questions and being specific, nobody came back to us with the alternatives and asking for that financially written. I sent it out under my own steam. Now, talking about professional communication and talking about the comments with regards to working with Labour, why shouldn't we work with Labour? Let's remember who put the independents in that position. Somebody seems to have forgotten. Who put us in that position? And a position where I then took the mantle and had professional discussions, and that's simply it. And those professional discussions are in favour of the residents of Murtha Tidville, to make sure that we can get these budgets through, to make sure that we can make decisions in full council because of our numbers. So it is about having those professional discussions. I want to thank and put on record Councillor Darren Roberts and Councillor Clive Jones for having those professional discussions. And whilst I've just said what I've said, I would like to thank Councillor Kevin O'Neill, because he was vocal in those discussions in a positive manner as well. He was open for discussion. However, those discussions were cut short and no further dialogue. And that wasn't mine or my deputy's responsibility or issue. And last but not least, the independence brand is not dented at all. We are there for the people of Murtha Tidville. There's some egos that are dented, but that's because of their own doing. We are absolutely here for the residents of Murtha Tidville. We will continue, hopefully, to be here for the residents of Murtha Tidville, and we will continue to showcase the positive aspects of what we've done as an independent administration, and not just in the last year, but in the last 5 years, and recognising everybody that's been a part of that independent group in the last 5 years and all of the hard work that they have done. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor David Hughes requested a recorded vote. So are there 5 councillors that agree with that, please? Yes,
Okay,
we have
so we
more than
passed the
5,
vote.
so I'll hand you over to Caris to conduct a recorded vote then, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'll go through the list again, and what I'll say as we start this is if you are one of those members who lost connection at any point, you will need to tell me whether you feel that you are unable to vote as a result of not hearing the debate, or else tell me whether you are voting for, against or abstaining. So we'll start again then with Councillor Julian Amos.
Against.
Councillor Andrew Barry.
Against.
Councillor Chris Barry.
For.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
Yeah, that's 4.
Thank you. Councillor Brent Carter.
Mr. Mayor, I'm quite happy in the fact that I heard all the debate. In doing my first speech, I said about I was happy with the 1%, so I'm happy to vote for on this occasion.
Thank you. Councillor David Chaplin.
For Caris.
Thank you. Councillor Malcolm Colbran.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Chris Davis.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Jeremy Davis.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor Lee Davis.
4.
Councillor Ernie Goldsworthy.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Kevin Gibbs.
4.
Councillor David Hughes.
Against.
Thank you. Councillor David Isaac.
Caris, my computer dropped out when the questions were being asked, so I didn't get all the debate.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Isaac. I think we had that discussion when you mentioned that to us earlier. Councillor Cheryl Jago.
4.
Councillor Clive Jones.
4.
Councillor David Jones.
4.
Councillor Harvey Jones. Councillor Harvey.
Sorry, 4. 4.
Thank you. Sorry, I've had to go off my screen there. Councillor Michelle Jones.
4.
Councillor Gareth Lewis.
4.
Councillor Lisa Mitten. 4. Councillor Kevin O'Neill.
Against.
Councillor Gareth Richards.
4.
Councillor Darren Roberts.
Yeah, as previously mentioned, Monitoring Officer, I'm content I heard the debate. I dipped out briefly at the comment stage, so I will be voting for. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Tony Rogers.
4.
Councillor Declan Salmon.
I'm against the council tax rise.
Thank you. Councillor Bill Smith.
4. 4.
Thank you. Councillor Geraint Thomas.
4.
Councillor Ian Thomas.
4.
Councillor John Thomas.
Against.
Councillor Scott Thomas.
4.
And Councillor Clive Tovey.
Oh, 4. Sorry about that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. I make that 23 for, 7 against and 1 unable to vote. Caris.
That's right. That's the figures that I have, and therefore the motion is carried.
Okay, thank you. So we move on to agenda item number 6 then, which is Council Tax Resolution 2022-23. And this is Chris Davis, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So obviously it's been a long evening, members, and we still have a considerable number of reports. So sadly, you're going to be stuck with my dulcet tones for the rest of the night. hope it doesn't give you bad dreams or nightmares anyway. But in respect of us obviously being able to move forward now and consider this report tonight, the summary of the report then is contained in section 1, that the council is required obviously by legislation to disclose the calculations of its budget requirement and council tax for 22-23 and the statutory resolutions, and to approve the formal council tax resolution for the financial year 2022-23. As per the previous report, then the budget requirement at section 1.2 for 22-23 for council tax resolution purposes is £143,808.88, with a band D council tax for 22-23 set out as follows. Obviously, A, Murtha Tidville County Borough Council council tax £1,746.27. The discussions we've had in respect of the matter of the Police and Crime Commissioner for South Wales of £302.11. And obviously for those residents affected in the wards of Bidlinog and Trelewis, the contribution to the Community Council of £23.95. And at 1.3, the formal statutory council tax resolution for 22-23 as included at Appendix 1. So, Mr Mayor, I'll move to the recommendations in the report. At 2.1, that the formal statutory council tax resolution 22-23 financial year, as outlined in Appendix 1 and summarised in paragraph 5.1, be noted and approved. That the Police and Crime Commissioner for South Wales approved, but not supported by Murtha Tidville representative, it's fair to say, precept for 22-23 of £5,615.451 for Murtha Tidville County Borough Council area be noted. The Bedlinog and Trelewis Community Council approved precept for 22-23 financial year of £27,870 for the Community Council area be noted, and that the Welsh Government 22-23 set non-domestic rate for Wales of 53.5 in the pound also be noted, and subject to any questions or comments from members, I so move.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Councillor Midden, would you like to second that?
Yes, I second that, Mr Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions then, please? No one is indicating. So are there any comments, please? Councillor Declan Salmon.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. A lot of what I'm going to say now is what Councillor Sherelle Jago has mentioned in the previous report, but I'm going to mention it now because the police precept is mentioned specifically in this agenda item. Right, the following is not aimed at police officers who regularly put their safety and well-being on the line when they go to work each day, but I'm absolutely flabbergasted that the police precept has been set at 5%. In the Police and Crime Commissioner's report, it says we are not prepared to withdraw from local communities or to stop tackling low-level offending or to miss opportunities for prevention. So neighbourhood policing and community safety sit at the heart of our strategy. Well, unfortunately, from what I've seen over the last 12 months, I have to disagree with this. I'm being regularly contacted by residents who are really frustrated with what has happened to the police service and the apparent lack of support they receive. More and more, I feel as if I'm doing their job for them. It also says in the report, for the first time, a majority of 55% of responses indicated that they would not be willing to pay more in 2022. I'm sorry, but the Police and Crime Commission needs to listen to residents and ask himself why they aren't willing to pay more. And also, he should have taken more consideration of the financial pressure residents are under and will be facing in the coming months. Based on that, I will be voting against this tonight.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Salmon. Are there any other comments? No one is indicating, so I'll hand you back to Caris to take a vote, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So can I go in our usual order when we're taking a normal vote? So can I ask all those who wish to abstain, please show now. Thank you. All those who wish to vote against, please show now. Is everybody done? I don't want to stop before everybody's done. Right. Thank you. So if everybody could put their hands down now, and then we'll go to the rest of the vote. Everybody. Sorry, please don't start voting in favour yet, because we still have some hands which haven't gone down. I know this is difficult because sometimes when you press it, it double registers. There we are. I think we're all good now. Can everybody who wishes to vote in favour, can you please vote now? And that's it. That's carried, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. So if you all lower our hands, please. Just waiting for Councillor Bill Smith. There we go. Thank you very much, Councillor Smith. Move on to agenda item number 7 then, please. Non-domestic rates, retail, leisure and hospitality rates relief in Wales 2022 to 2023. Can I ask all members who declared an interest in this item to turn off their cameras and microphones for the duration of this item, please? And then I'll hand you over to Councillor Chris Davis.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to do a bit of a double act because, to be fair, a number of officers have sat through a long debate, and I'd like to give Mark Price, obviously our revenues manager, an opportunity to come in and contribute and provide an update to members in terms of some of the work that's already started on this. So, Mark, I'm going to take us through the summary, and before I move to the recommendations, you and officers have worked, tirelessly hard, and I think members, should be provided with an update on terms of where we are. So, if you don't mind, it won't just be all my voice then. But obviously, the Welsh Government. The Minister for Finance announced on the 20th of December that they intended to extend the support to local authorities in terms of administering the expansion on a temporary basis for the 22-23 financial year of relief for non-domestic rates for retail, leisure and hospitality sectors, and obviously provide a scheme. So 1.2, the report outlines that the scheme is to provide support for eligible occupied retail, leisure and hospitality properties by offering a discount of 50% on the 22-23 non-domestic rates demands. The scheme, as the government has set it out, will apply to all eligible businesses. However, the relief will be subject to a cap in the amount each business can claim across Wales. The total amount of relief available is £110,000 across all properties occupied by the same business and business owner. A guidance document has been provided by Welsh Government and is available via the background papers link for members if they wished or have wanted to look at it. And this provides a detail of how the scheme will operate. We are aware at 1.4 then that the scheme will be operated and grant funded under Section 47 of the Local Government Finance Act 88, and the Welsh Government will endeavour to reimburse local authorities for the relief that's provided under a grant. So that just outlines some of the technical terms about how the grant will be administered. At 1.5 then, we note that potential recipients of the relief will be identified from the authority's business rates relief records, and all businesses will be required to make a declaration on the amount of relief they seek in across Wales to ensure that it doesn't exceed the cap. When applying to individual local authorities, an application form has been made available for eligible businesses. So Mark, just before you do come in, I do note, and you can pick this up as well, that this is positive as businesses start to recover out of COVID. But I think it's really important for members to note, because it isn't included in the report. But obviously, this discount that's been offered as a one-off for businesses in those sectors is different to the relief that's been offered in previous years, and businesses, I'm sure by our revenues team, will be advised of that. You know, in previous years, Welsh Government have offered the discount of up to 100%. This scheme obviously falls slightly short of that, but it is some contribution. So Mark, if you'd like to provide, before I move to the recommendations, members with a bit of a verbal update in terms of the work you and the team have been doing in respect of administering this rate relief scheme.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Davis. Yes, it is a slight variance on 2020 and 2021, whereas there was 100% relief awarded to eligible businesses in pretty much the same sectors as what's being laid before you today, up to a rateable value of £500,000. To give you some detail of what that actually means, that we assisted 488 different businesses in 2020 to the value of 7.7 million. 476 businesses in 2021 to the value of 6.2. We're looking around about 400 businesses on this particular round of grants to a value of £1.9 million, the current estimate. It's quite a favourable relief package in comparison to that of Scotland, because they're only offering 50% for 3 months. There is a requirement for the local authority to adopt the scheme under section 47, as was indicated in the report. As Chris had mentioned, it is quite favourable to those within the business community that would be eligible. There is no cost to the local authority. It is only to a benefit of those within the business community. Up to this particular juncture, we've been communicating with a number of businesses, as I mentioned, the 400, inviting them to apply. There's an electronic application form available on the local authority website, and to date we received 85 applications. So straight away, if this is accepted by the local authority, we will be to reduce 85 businesses' liability and only charge them 50% going forward at the start of April, and obviously go back and invite those that wish to apply thereafter. If anybody's got any questions relating to the report and the current scheme, please feel free to ask.
Great, thank you so much for that, Mark. And I just want to put on record, just before I move the recommendations, and when you thought you were probably going to have a quieter time after delivering COVID, obviously relief grants and NDR support to businesses. Now this new rate relief scheme has come about. It's going to keep you guys even busier. So that wish to return to normal business is probably going to be slightly hampered. But I wanted to put on record my thanks to you and all of your the last couple of years in terms of supporting businesses across the county borough. So subject then obviously to questions and comments, I move the recommendations at 2.1 and 2.2. At 2.1, the implementation of the retail leisure hospitality rates relief scheme in accordance with the rules described in this report be approved, and that section 47 1A and section 47.3, the discretionary relief of the Local Government Finance Act 1988 shall apply as regards to the inherited rights described above in accordance with the rules described in relation to those. It's reasonable for the council to make this decision having regard to the interests of persons liable to pay council tax set by the council, and subject to questions and comments. Mr. Mayor, I shall move.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Davis. Councillor Mitton, are you seconding this?
Yes, happy to second that, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions then, please? No questions have been indicated. Are there any comments, please? Councillor Andrew Barry.
Yeah, welcomed report, Mr. Mayor. Again, you know, we have the best team in Wales working on it, so it's hardly surprising that we're going to be very successful in delivering this one again. It's a difficult area. I mean, business is a stretch to the limit. Retail has gone through a transformation in the last 2 years, which is second to none. You know, it's a very difficult landscape there now, and I think in Murtha we need to be looking at a complete retail strategy in terms of how we take the town and these individual businesses forward. In terms of leisure and hospitality, very, very difficult, you know, but it will open up, it will get better. We are in a prime position for these businesses to absolutely flourish, and flourish they will, take my word for it. You know, particularly when the A465 is complete and we see those those individuals and families coming from the Midlands and up north down to the Pembrokeshire coast with staycations to the fore with everybody, these businesses would do well. But this interim period post-pandemic is very, very difficult. So it's a very welcome report. I'm sure that the team will deliver it in such a professional manner as they've done over the last 2 years. And again, just to commend the team, you know, they've been, you know, they've worked over and above over the last 2.5 years to provide not just Murtha businesses with an exemplary service, but to the credit of this council has been recognised throughout Wales and further in terms of how they've performed. So well done, Mark and the team. Give my congratulations to the guys again for what they've done, and I'm sure this will be a great success as well. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Barry. Any further comments? No, no one else is indicating. So I'll pass you over to Caris. I'm aware that 2 councillors may have to leave the meeting shortly, Caris. I think they're still in at the moment, but for this vote, but Councillor Lee Davis and Councillor Shrell Jago need to leave shortly.
Okay, well, we'll motor on as fast as we can then, in case we can get them into a next item as well. So can I ask all those who wish to abstain, can you please show now? Thank you. All those voting against, please show now. Thank you. All those voting in favour, please show now. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's carried.
Okay, thank you very much. If you could all lower our hands then, please. Yes, hopefully we can move through some of these other items a bit quicker than some of the previous ones. But can I ask anybody who declared an interest for the previous item to rejoin the meeting by turning their cameras back on, please? And I'll take my hand down as I've told everybody else to. There we go. Okay, so now we move on to agenda item number 8, appointment of Director of Governance and Resources, and this is Councillor Lisa Mitten, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, the summary of the report is at 1.1. This report seeks approval to implement shortlisting and interview arrangements to appoint a new Director of Governance and Resources. 1.2. Delegated authority is sought for the Chief Exec to determine the recruitment timetable and any changes that may be required to be made to the interview panels in consultation with both the Leader and Cabinet Member for Governance and Resources. At 1.3, the final appointment decision will be determined at the end of the recruitment process. And so I'll move on to the recommendations. They are that at 2.1, the shortlisting and interview arrangements to appoint a new Director of Governance and Resources be approved. And at 2.2, the granting of delegated authority to the Chief Executive to determine the recruitment timetable and any changes that may be required to be made to the interview panels in consultation with the Leader and Cabinet Member for Governance and Corporate Services be approved. And just also for colleagues to note that in 4.2, in openness and transparency, cross-party work, etc., working together, that the interview panel will be made up, the councillor interview panel will be made up of the Cabinet Member for Governance and Resources and representation from each of the political groups. I so move.
Thank you. Councillor Chris Davis.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, obviously really pleased to second this. Obviously, this is part of the strengthening of the senior management team as part of the newly appointed Chief Executive's restructure. So this will only be a good thing. You know, we have obviously had you know, the support of the Assurance Board. This is a really positive step for this council and this administration, supporting the Chief Executive in appointment of a Director of Governance and Resources, which will be responsible for bringing together the corporate support functions and transformation agenda. You know, focus will be on strengthening, ensuring good governance and sustainability for the council moving forward. So I'm delighted by this report, and I'm delighted to to second the leader.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Davis. Councillor Clive Jones has a question.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's on page 159, paragraph 4.2 and 4.3. And 4.2 says that the council interview panel will be made up of cabinet member and representatives from each of the political groups. But then 4.3 says the final interview panel will be made up of the chief executive, the leader, and the chair of the Improvement and Assurance Board. Could someone clarify for me, with the councillor interview panel, I presume that they won't make the actual appointment, but am I right in saying that they will feed into the final interview panel? And if that is the case, can someone give me the reason or reasons why on the actual final interview that there's only one councillor on that?
If I come there, Mr. Mayor, that was the discussion we had with regards to the practical arrangements, Councillor Jones, that we thought would be most manageable to deliver it via a separate councillor panel. Obviously, part of the constitution is that we bring the recommendation for the proceedings for the proposed interview arrangements to yourselves as council. I had conversations both from an HR perspective with the leader, deputy, and Councillor Chris Davis as a portfolio member, and Steve Thomas as chair of the Assurance Board in terms of how best to deliver this suite of interviews. And we felt that these arrangements were the most robust in terms of being able to deliver the process.
And do I take it, I know you're talking about this appointment, which is a very important appointment, that this will happen now with other very senior appointments in the future?
Yeah, so obviously, Councillor Jones, you were part of the chief exec's appointment and the deputy chief exec's appointment. So what we thought, because this is a director level, we didn't want to have overkill, and that's why we thought a separate panel rather than having a cast of, you know, a significant panel in terms of numbers. That's why we separated it out. But yes, our intention is to finalise a position. If this works well, we can review it, and then we'd build that in terms of going forward as a custom and practice then.
But the views of the councillor panel will be fed into the final interview panel. Right.
Exactly, yes.
Right.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Kevin O'Neill, please.
Yeah, my question is about the same area, and I was a little bit confused isn't the right word. I was looking for consistency, and you touched on that for the chief executive and the deputy chief executive, there was a mixture of senior leaders and officers. I felt that consistency should be maintained. I'm not quite sure of the role of the chair of the Assurance Board there. I'm not quite clear what it means by feeding the views in to that panel, what weight that carries. But from my perspective, there should be a consistency and clarity. This is an extremely serious post. It's one that across parties we've all bid for. And I'm not, I'm going to be honest, I'm not particularly reassured that we will have the necessary say in this matter. And I'm not, the process seems different from the one that you went through, Ellis. Thank you.
No, absolutely, Councillor O'Neill. If you recall, the last director appointment we made was Sue Walker's, which you sat on yourself. And the panel at that point was yourself, the chief executive, and the deputy chief executive as me, and that was it. So, and obviously Dorothy at the time, who was the incumbent post holder. So there isn't a consistent approach, I'm afraid, and that's what we're trying to get to. But in terms of the procedure and process that I went through from a chief exec's perspective, that was deemed obviously not required in terms of the level of rigor and for this level, and we wanted to have a pragmatic approach, considering that obviously the cost that was involved in going to an external to run that process. So we've gone with an approach that we feel is commensurate with the director level, which still gives the engagement from a councillor perspective and making sure that we seek the political views and feed those into the process and take account of each party's position on the post. But it's almost from a manageable response perspective for the director position that we split it up in this way. So we're trying to leave the rigour in there, but in a manageable way is essentially where we're at.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Andrew Barry, please.
Well, thanks, Mayor. Welcome the report. Position that's long overdue. It sort of completes the team. I'm a little perplexed as well by the chair of the assurance board being on there. You talk about consistency. So into the future, how long are the assurance board going to be around then, or is this a one-off with the assurance board member? I don't get what you're saying there. That doesn't fit.
No, in terms of, well, given the role that we're recruiting, sorry, I mean, I can't answer the latter part of the question that you've just posed, but in terms of, and apologies, Councillor Neil, I didn't fully answer your point as well. In terms of having someone such as Steve Thomas as chair of the assurance board to assist in the interview of this post, which covers a wide range of areas, but namely finance being a key one. Obviously, the background that the assurance board chair has in respect of this, and also the recommendations we've had from the assurance board in terms of strengthening our corporate governance, which this role has, resulted in, really, in terms of addressing that. We thought, again, I thought it was prudent that we invite the chair of the assurance board to partake in this interview and support us in this, which he's kindly agreed to do.
I mean, Steve Thomas, very capable guy, highly experienced, and we're lucky to have him in a lot of respects. It's just when you come to consistency, I can't see how that's going to fit with, if the assurance board are about, to leave, which I doubt, how that can be attributed to consistency. But I take your point.
Okay, thank you. Are there any further questions? No. Are there any comments then, please? No comments. Caris.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So can I ask, therefore, anybody who wishes to abstain on this item, can you please show now? Thank you. Anybody wishing to vote against, can you please show now? And all those wishing to vote in favour, can you please show now? And that's carried, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much. If you all lower our hands again then, please. Okay, maybe a little bit of a lag. Councillor Rogers, have you lowered your hand? It's still showing on the screen. Thank you very much. Thank you. So we move on to agenda item number 9, statement of wellbeing and focus on the future wellbeing in our community. And that's Councillor Lisa Minton again, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, the summary of the report at 1.1 is obviously prior to the Wellbeing of Future Generations Wales Act 2015, the Council produced a corporate plan that was aligned to the Regional Single Integrated Plan, the SIP. Lots of acronyms, I do apologise. The Wellbeing of the Future Generations Wales Act 2015 changed this to focus on the Wales we want, which is emphasised in the 7 wellbeing goals that have been passed by Welsh Government into legislation. At 1.2, of course, together with this, the Act states that the ways in which we should work to achieve the goals, sustainable development principles, these are known as the 5 ways of working, i.e. long-term, preventative, involvement, integration and collaboration. To embed this change, Murtha Tidville County Borough Council's shared vision document makes the connections from the 7 national wellbeing goals through to the local wellbeing objectives and priorities. At 1.3, this corporate wellbeing plan has been developed year on year as a result of lessons learned. Over the years, we've become more focused on our 4 wellbeing themes and objectives, namely, of course, best start to life, working life, living well, and environmental wellbeing. This has helped us remove some of the naturally occurring silos, which also sharpen governance arrangements. At 1.4, the Council's Statement of Wellbeing reaffirms our 4 local wellbeing objectives for the community over a 5-year period, 2017 to 2022. In other words, this is why we are doing what's been set out in the focus on our future plan. The focus on the future plan goes into detail of how and what we will do to achieve our wellbeing objectives. And in readiness for 2022 implementation, there's been no evidence to indicate that there is a need to change or amend the 4 themes and corresponding wellbeing objectives. A 1.5, to ensure the consideration is given to how the Council can help tackle poverty in all service areas, and to positively respond to the feedback received during scrutiny meetings last year, we have integrated the Tackling Poverty strategy into the Corporate Wellbeing Plan. Interestingly, this point was also identified as a barrier in workshops conducted by Audit Wales as part of their work testing progress against the working life, skills and employment and best start, flying start themes between 2017 to 2019. This theme has remained in the plan this year and we build on the work done. At 1.6, this year we continue to integrate our RTI, Recovery, Transformation and Improvement Plan, into our Corporate Wellbeing Plan. The RTI plan focuses on 3 areas that we need to address to better deliver our wellbeing objectives. These 3 priorities are improving our education standards, increasing our resilience and social care, and economic recovery. We've also integrated our performance management and quality assurance framework into our corporate wellbeing plan. And therefore, Mr. Mayor, I put forward to you the recommendations 2.1, the statement of wellbeing and focus on the future, wellbeing in our community documents be approved. I so move.
Thank you. Councillor Chris Davis, do you wish to second?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, in doing so, I just want to put on record, my thanks, Cabinet's thanks, and actually, hopefully, Council's thanks who will support the recommendations here to Andrew Mogford and his team in Business Change. As you can see, just by the volume of the papers, a considerable amount of work has gone into the development of Focus on My Future, the corporate plan, and we're at a pivotal point really in terms of me being previously the chair of the Regional Partnership Board, a member of the Public Service Board, because some key strategic pieces of work are currently ongoing in respect of the population needs assessment piece of work, as well as obviously the development of the wellbeing plan that supports the development of the strategic investment provided by the Regional Partnership Board and the work that the Public Service Board does in terms of oversight of delivery of the wellbeing of future generations. So I'm really pleased that we've been able to bring this report forward as a bit of a holding position whilst we are able to digest particularly the population needs and the development of the wellbeing plan. So we're in a position that to refer to a point made by a member earlier on, that we are absolutely a listening and responding council, that we will use the opportunity that the PNA, the Population Needs Assessment, offers us to be able to reflect, to be able to pause, and to be able to build all of those reflections, all of those comments, all of that consultation and engagement from members of the communities of Murtha Tidville into the development of our wellbeing priorities moving forward. There's a real strong commitment from this administration, and I know from the Chief Executive, Deputy Chief Executive, the Leader and the Cabinet, to tackling the determinants of poverty. We talked about it at length this evening in terms of setting council tax and the challenges and difficulties that come with that. So I absolutely commend this report to you, and I'm delighted to second it.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Are there any questions, please? No, there are no questions. So are there any comments, please? Councillor Darren Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll keep it brief because it's been a long meeting. It's an excellent report. I'd like to obviously echo my colleagues' thanks to Andrew Mogford and his team. It clearly shows the aspiration and the vision of the local authority when it comes to the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act, and the fact that Councillor Clive Jones has not asked any questions, shows how well written the report is. So I'd just like to put that on record. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Roberts, for that. Are there any other comments? No, no other comments. Well, I'll hand you back over to Karis to conduct a vote.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So can I ask all those who would seek to abstain, can you please show now? Thank you. All those voting against, please show now. Thank you. All those voting in favour, please show now. Thank you. That's carried, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. If you could lower our hands then, please, members. Thank you. Agenda item number 10, Reserve Forces Training and Mobilisation Policy. And this is Chris Davis again.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Obviously, only 3 more to go now and 2 more after this one. So I'm really delighted to bring forward this report this evening. And it's, you know, it is by pure coincidence that it's here in front of us when we consider, you know, the state of the world and we consider the state of the atrocities that are happening out in Ukraine and obviously all of what's going on in Iraq. But the summary of the report brings to members this evening then a draft Reserve Forces Training and Mobilisation policy that forms an integral part of the Council's ongoing commitment to the UK Defence Employer Recognition Scheme. And this scheme encourages employers to support defence and inspire others to do the same. The scheme encompasses bronze, silver and gold awards for employer organisations that pledge, demonstrate or advocate support to defence and the armed forces community and align their values with this. The Council, I'm pleased to report, has already obtained the Bronze Award, and we're in the process of working to achieve the Silver Award. You know, Mr. Mayor, in recognition of this, obviously we've got Sarah Miles, who's on the call in our workforce development team, who's worked really hard in respect to this. I want to put on record as well, Councillor Andrew Barry's you know, commitment and passion for you know, his role as the Armed Forces Covenant champion, because Andrew, you know, over the life of this administration has done a huge amount of work. You know, he brought the Welsh Guards to Murtha Tidville and the GOAT as well to Penderyn Square, and you know, that is a real test of this council's commitment to the reserve and armed forces in terms of the contribution that you know, reservists and members of the military right across the board you know, contribute to you know, keeping us all safe in what can be very difficult times. So this is an excellent report. So subject to any questions and comments from members, I move the recommendations of 2.1 that the Reserve Forces Training and Mobilisation Policy be approved with immediate effect, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. And I believe Councillor Tony Rogers will be seconding this.
I'm prepared to second that, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any questions? No, there are no questions. Are there any comments? Councillor Andrew Barry.
Yeah, I mean, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's been a long time coming, the report. We've worked towards it for a long time now. The work that we've been doing towards the covenant, I mean, we've achieved as Chris has alluded to, we've achieved the Bronze Award, and we should easily achieve the Silver Award. with our efforts here with the reservists, and particularly that we've included the adult cadet instructors as well. It's an area of work I think that we've sort of not given credence to over many years, particularly as Murtha and the Valleys area is such a ripe recruitment area for the armed forces historically and currently. And it's a welcomed report. It takes us a huge step forward, recognising that the commitment that these reservists are giving the country, and particularly now, perhaps we'll have to bring a report forward for a bit of a home guard with the Dad's Army element to it. So I can see a couple of faces here. I'm thinking I recognise Fraser in the other as well. So it's a well welcomed report. It'll take us a step further to the Silver Award, and it'll be well deserved. Thank particularly Jamie Island, who's our Armed Forces Liaison Officer, and Jane for the efforts and work that she puts in tirelessly towards the Armed Forces, because without those two links, then we wouldn't be achieving any of this. So a nod to them, and obviously to Sarah for doing the groundwork on the report itself. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Great, thank you, Councillor Barry. Councillor Julian Amos, please.
Quick question, that's all, Mr. Mayor.
So no, we're on comments now, Councillor Amos.
It's only good. It's a comment.
Can you phrase your question as a comment?
Can I make a comment then? I was just going to make a comment on something that Andrew said. I wonder who Andrew, if it is Dad's Army in this chamber, who he sees as Captain Mannering.
Yeah, I don't think we'll press Andrew on that one.
Could be a number of takers for that, Councillor Amos.
I just volunteered, either me or Clive Jones.
Some additions.
Okay, so I'll hand you over to Karis now. Then we'll take a vote on this.
Make your minds up.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're voting on the report, not on who's Captain Mannering.
Yes, yeah, we're not doing a selection process for that.
Should I report tonight? For or against? You know,
So can I ask all those who wish to abstain? Can you please show now?
Oh, I don't know.
Thank you. Can I ask all those voting against, please show now? Thank you. All those voting in favour, please show now. And that is carried, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. If we could lower our hands, please.
Councillor Bill Smith, can you just put your hand down for us, please? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we move on to agenda item number 11, Queen's Platinum Jubilee Beacons, 2nd of June 2022. And this is Chris Davis, surprise, surprise.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Obviously, this is quite a monumental report as we move back to some kind of normality in life with less restrictions in respect of COVID. Obviously, we will be celebrating the Queen's Platinum Jubilee in June of this year in a few months' time. And in recognition of that, obviously, this milestone, the 70th year as Queen Elizabeth as the monarch and head of the Commonwealth. We'll be looking to put on and be part of some celebrations in the county borough as part of celebrations that will happen up and down the United Kingdom. So the lighting of a beacon is well renowned for celebrations of this kind, and as outlined at 1.2 of the report, this enables communities, individuals and organisations to pay their tribute as part of this weekend. So this report seeks approval from members to agree to Murtha Tidville County Borough Council participating in this, which will be an historic event. This probably will be the last of its kind in terms of the Queen herself, in terms of this Jubilee. So this will be an historic occasion. Work has been undertaken by Kerry Dinham as head of corporate comms, but in her role as well as being the support to the Lord Lieutenant of Mid Glamorgan. As you can see, the report outlines really 3.2 the different types of beacons. 3.3 proposes obviously some timescales in respect of the lighting of the beacon and some of the events and activities that will go on as part of the proposed community event. Section 3.7 of the report outlines where potentially the event could be held in the county borough, and currently there are ongoing conversations and there'll be discussions on a multi-agency basis with the council's event safety advisory group, which includes representatives of council departments, third sector organisations, and most importantly our emergency responders in terms of emergency service providers. Section 4 sets out the financial implications, and there will be a small cost required to host this prestigious event. But obviously any costs will be incurred and met out of the existing corporate comms consultation and cabinet office budget. So, Mr. Mayor, subject to questions and comments, and I move the recommendations at section 2.1 and hope that, you know, given the significant occasion that this will offer us and this milestone, that all members will be in support of this. I move the recommendations at 2.1 that the lighting of the beacon and associated activities in Murtha Tidville as part of the Queen's Platinum Jubilee weekend be approved, Mr. Mayor.
Thank
Second,
you, Councillor
Mr.
Davis.
Mayor. I'm
Councillor
seconding
Garrett
it.
Thomas.
Yep. Oh, I've seconded it. Yep.
Okay, that's been seconded then by Councillor Rogers.
Yeah.
Councillor Clive Jones.
Captain Mannering.
Captain Corporal Jones. I just want to ask a quick question.
That's a deal then.
It doesn't. We'll be one of the areas where we'll have a beacon lit, one of the 1,500. It doesn't actually state in the report exactly where that's going to go. We got 3 months, but to decide. So, Mr. Mayor, can I ask that where that beacon is going to be placed will be advertised well in advance to all and sundry, and certainly well in advance before the 2nd of June?
Yeah, Councillor Jones, I'll come in there if it's okay with Councillor Davis.
Of course, Kerry.
Yeah, as we mentioned, it'll be all locations will be considered as part of the ESA group, which is the Events Safety Advisory Group, which is a multi-agency approach. Some of the locations that are being considered, as mentioned in the report, is Penderyn Square, Janice Rowlands at the bottom of town, and potentially Kavatha Park. But yeah, as you mentioned, they will be communicated well in advance. I have had discussions today with Paul Lewis from our emergency planning department, and that's going to be considered as imminently next week to discuss the location. So as soon as we get that approval from everyone as part of that group, we will communicate it to all members. Can I just add, obviously, you know, you will have seen from the guidance as well that I attached to the report that many local authorities and other organisations are participating in this event. As Councillor Davis mentioned, it is a historic event and maybe the last for our reigning Queen. And we've also set up a working group with regards to the Platinum Jubilee celebrations to advise members within the community how to hold and the guidance around street parties, road closures, etc. as part of these celebrations. So all that information will be circulated to all members and signposted from our channels. Thank you, Councillor Jones.
Okay, thank you. Are there any further questions? Councillor Andrew Barry.
Yeah, can Kerry and Chris contact MI5 and explain how you know it's going to be the last thing we're going to be celebrating for the Queen?
No, we don't know. We hope not. But I think, you know, that's what's anticipated. You know, obviously.
Councillor Barry, Kerry, and I, we signed the official secret sack, so we can't say anymore. All right. So
once in a hole, stop digging, they say.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, thank you. No more questions. So any comments on this, please? No one wishes to comment, so Caris for a vote.
Thank you. Before we all get carted off for treason, can I ask that anybody who wishes to abstain, can you please vote now? Thank you. Anybody voting against, please vote now. Thank you.
Councillor Jones, I think you had a legacy hand up there. That's right, it's come down now.
You didn't mean to vote against, Councillor Jones.
No, I'm sure you didn't mean to vote
You might
against.
get done for treason.
The tower with it.
Right, so let's get to all those voting in favour. Please vote now. And that's carried, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. If you could lower our hands, please, members. Okay, Councillor O'Neill and Councillor Scott Thomas are still registering on my screen. Thank you very much. Agenda item number 12, apprenticeships. It's Councillor Chris Davis again.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I really want us to end on a high tonight. It's been a long meeting. This is the last formal report this evening, but the leader in her State of the Nation speech touched on the great work of the council in respect of apprenticeships. This originally was going to be an information report, but as Cabinet we felt that we needed to celebrate this council's and this administration's commitment to young people and to our apprenticeship programme in terms of offering opportunities for particularly young people, but not limited to young people across the county borough, to have opportunities within the council to take up training and learning opportunities. And as you can see at 3.2 of the report, there have been many opportunities within highways, parks and cemeteries and engineering, where we've given young people particularly the opportunity to have an apprenticeship with them, and then we've had real successes in terms of those young people then securing paid and sustained employment with us. 3.3 of the report outlines the process for how apprenticeships are run, and as you can see there, they typically a 3-year programme where I'll say young people because it's predominantly young people, but apprentices have an opportunity. They come here, they get work experience, but then they also go to college or a training provider to undertake the knowledge and practical element of the trade and gain the qualifications. This absolutely is, you can see at section 4, a big part of this council's commitment to its workforce, to our healthier organisations strategy around future success planning. We have a significant number of spods within the organisation. It's about skills and development, it's about leadership, it's about making Murtha an attractive place to come to work, retaining our staff, part of well-being. I wanted to, put on record really this administration's commitment, where we made £200,000 of a reserve available to support an apprenticeship programme for a 2-year period. I think, long may that continue. We have to contribute significantly to an apprenticeship levy, so I think it's really, really important that we give something back to that. The leader in her statement spoke about the Aspire apprenticeships and the great opportunities within manufacturing and engineering sector that we created. It's really lovely to see, and I'm really grateful to the report author, to Hannah, who stayed on the call all evening for this. So there better be some questions. Bless her, fair play to this last item all this time. It's really lovely, members, to note at section 5, obviously the feedback that we've received from apprentices who've joined us at the council. As you can see, section 6 of the report outlines now the next steps in terms of what we propose to do. So I'm really delighted to end this full council meeting on an absolute high in terms of showing this council's commitment to our young people, to apprenticeships, to our commitment as a council to supporting, creating opportunities within this organisation for people to gain a trade, learn a skill, and get qualifications and gain employment. So subject to any questions and comments, Mr. Mayor, I move to the recommendations at section 2.1 that the content of this report be noted and, fingers crossed, not for very long, but be debated. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Davies. Councillor Tony Rogers, I believe you're
Yeah, I'm seconding that, and it's my hat-trick, and I'm keeping the ball. I win it. Oh, I'm entitled to it. Good. Yeah, second that.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Rogers. Councillor David Chaplin has a question.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, fully support this and an excellent report. But just one observation: the report was written on the 16th of September. So why is it taking so long to present it to full council?
I can come in there. We recruited our apprentices last September. So we started to obviously collate the information from last September in terms of the progress that we were making with the recruitment process, the induction process, and settling those apprentices into the local authority. So it's just been something that we've built on over the last couple of months to include section 5 with the feedback.
So the report wasn't finished on the 16th of September. It started on then. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, we were building it from there. Yeah.
Thank you, Hannah. Much appreciated.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Councillor Declan Salmon, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My first question is just clarification. Can you tell me how many posts were available to apprentices, as I was confused by A5 and A6? A5 says there were 13 applications for 18 posts, and A6 there were 5 posts that later increased to 7 posts.
So when we secured the funding for the apprentices, we went out to the departments to ask them to bid into that pot of money. So we had applications, but some people actually asked for more than one apprentice. So there were sort of duplicate roles for that. So the decision then to who to get that pot of money went through a robust process. Based on the £200,000, that would equate to only 5 apprentices per year, because it's a 2-year programme. So the first 100,000 would be for 5 in the first year, and then for them to continue into the second year. We actually exceeded that target of 5 because we were able to secure some other funding from departmental budgets. So in September, we actually recruited 7 apprentices. Does that answer your question, Councillor Salmon?
Yeah, thank you, Hannah. My second question is, now, first of all, I'm fully in favour of apprenticeships. My questions, because as these apprenticeships generally end in someone receiving a full-time job, in any of the departments where an apprentice has been given a post, do we have any employees who don't work directly for the local authority, but instead are employed through an agency and have been with an agency for in excess of 2 years? And if so, as apprenticeships aren't age restrictive, did any of these agency workers get an apprenticeship?
We have done, yes, in the past. There have been highways and parks department that have had agency workers in the past, and when we've recruited for those, they've applied and been successful. Two of the apprentices for the parks department that we took on in September were volunteering. So again, it's people that we had given opportunities through work experience, volunteering, that are then able to take up some of those opportunities.
Okay, so when we employed those two people, for example, are there still people being employed by an agency for, say, in excess of 2 years in those departments?
I wouldn't like to answer that question because I don't have the agency figures, you know, to hand. But obviously we would look at that, and any agency people would be encouraged to apply when those vacancies come available.
Okay, thank you, Hannah. I just wondered, would you be able to let the councillors know, just for reference on that, please?
So you'd like to know how many agency workers?
Yeah, sorry, I'd just like to know that if any of those agency workers that say have been passed by for an apprenticeship, whether they applied or not, I don't know. It'd just be interesting to know.
Right. Okay. Yeah. No worry. I can come back to you on that.
And you would have consulted the unions as well and that sort of thing.
Yes. Yes. The unions have been consulted. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Hannah.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any further questions? No further questions. Any comments, please? Councillor Kevin O'Neill.
Yeah, just first of all, to end on a high note, absolutely delighted to see the report. It's an initiative that I'm highly supportive of, developing young people. Congratulations to all involved, cabinet members, leaders, etc. Well done, fantastic. Well done to Hannah and the team. I'm always impressed when I've worked with Hannah, very committed, very professional. And all I'd say is the song goes, more, more, more. As many as we can get in there and as many as we can finance to deal with that storm that's coming with our ageing population. But well done. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Councillor O'Neill. Councillor Andrew Barry, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A very important report. I'd echo what Kevin has said in regards to Hannah and a commitment to the report and working with these. The one thing I'd say is it is an important report, but it's probably more important for the next administration and the administration after that. The demographic of our workforce means that we're going to be losing some very talented and experienced officers in the years to come. And this is certainly one of the areas where apprenticeships would benefit in terms of sitting and working with those experienced and talented officers that we have to bring that talent through. So we've got consistency within our workforce, and we can work with that into the future. So I think for the future administrations, this is really, really important. And I think it pulls together things that we've talked about all night, really, from the very start. I think we've got the apprenticeships because we've got better and improved finances. Into the future, if we can improve our settlements, then we can get more apprentices. We can ensure that we keep that level of committed workforce, talented, experienced workforce that will take us into the future. So important today, excellent to see, Hannah, great report, but important into the future. So just keep banging the drum with the next administration as well. Well done.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Barry. Councillor Brent Carter, please.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. After tonight's meeting, I'm not quite sure how I'm saying this, but I find myself probably agreeing with Councillor Kevin O'Neill for the first time over the last 5 years. And I'm agreeing with Andrew as well, but I've agreed with Andrew a few times anyway. I think as one of the largest employers in the area, we should be one of the leading lights in terms of offering apprenticeships. For me, it really helps the organisation with sustainability and succession planning. So I'm all for this. And Hannah, thanks for the report. It's really, really informative. And good luck with the future. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Carter. If there are no further comments, I'll hand you over to Carison and conduct a vote.
Thank you. Councillor Carter, can you just put your hand down before we start? Thank
apologies, Mountain Officer.
That's all right. So can I ask anybody who wishes to abstain, can you please show now? Thank you. Anybody voting against, please show now. Thank you. All those voting in favour, please show now. And that's carried, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. If we could all lower our hands, please. Councillor David Hughes, is your hand lowered?
It's not
Still
working,
check.
sorry, Mark.
Right, and that's gone down now. Thank you, Councillor Hughes.
Okay,
There's
right.
sometimes a delay on the screen. Other business, item agenda number 13, to deal with any other urgent business or correspondence. I believe the leader of the council would like to make a statement at this point.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll start by saying Muzdumurara zum zu Ukraina, which means we stand with Ukraine in Ukrainian. We are united with both central and Welsh government's response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and we condemn the Russian leader for his aggression. I encourage all in the chamber and borough to show their support, which many already have done. We must also remember that this is an issue that the Russian leader has caused rather than Russian citizens, and we must support any citizens in our communities to reduce any community tensions. The situation in Ukraine is fast moving, and many discussions are taking place on how support and sanctuary is provided to those displaced by the war in Ukraine. Approximately 700,000 people have already fled Ukraine, and it is estimated up to 5 million people could leave if the fighting continues over a long period of time. While many refugees are initially arriving in neighbouring countries, it is believed many will travel onwards to other countries, and many trying to join family members or friends settled elsewhere. Therefore, just this afternoon, I, along with the other 21 leaders, have pledged our support to anybody seeking refuge from the Ukraine. And we will now work together with Welsh Government and Central Government on those processes, procedures and arrangements which are currently being worked out between everybody, and we'll update Council as soon as possible. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Lisa. I'm sure that many of us here support those sentiments. So thank you very much for that statement. Item number 14 on the agenda, to receive communications from their worship the Mayor. There are none. So that concludes the meeting. Thank you all very much for attending this evening, and I'll see you all soon. Okay, goodbye.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor.